What's up, Sifters? Welcome to GameFace, episode 231 on Sifted Games at Sifted.net. I'm Shane Satterfield, the founder of Sifted, the world's most advanced gaming website, and I'm here today to talk to you for the next couple hours about the biggest stories in games. And alongside me to do that is Matthew Kyle. What's up, Matt?
Hey.
How's your week been?
Not much. Long.
I like your hair, man. I like your hair now that it's getting longer. So you got past that stage in the middle where you look terrible, where your hair isn't short and it's not long yet, and it just looks awful. I got to that stage and I cut my hair myself. I am now back at that stage, and I am now gathering up the fortitude to cut my hair myself again. So you actually toughed it out and made it through to the point where it actually is long hair and it looks good. So
I mean, this is just wet, really.
Oh.
I
cleaned yourself up for the show, Kyle.
I mean, it's got a little man bun.
Yeah,
in the back.
Look at that. Oh, are you going to let it keep going even after all this insanity is over?
I don't think so. I don't like it very much.
Yeah. It's a lot to take care of. It's a pain in the butt.
It's a lot to take care of. Yeah. Like, I don't like blow drying things.
Yep. All that stuff you have to do. You normally don't.
Because you got to, or it looks terrible. Yeah. It just dries all weird and frizzy.
And it's like laying all in weird places. I hear you, man. I've had long hair a few times in my life, but I have really no interest in going back to it again. Those are my
I've had shaggy-ish hair. It was the 90s, right? But Like it's never been this long before. This is like if I let this go, it hangs down below my chin in the front, and it's beyond anything I've let it get. It's either that or like cut it myself, and I'm not going to do that. So
yep, I did that once, and my wife was shocked at how good of a job I did. I walked out of the bathroom, and she was like, I think you did better than like the girl who usually cuts your hair. I think she was just patronizing me to make, because I was like really freaked out. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to look like a freaking idiot. And I think she was just trying to make me feel better. But anyway, it is what it is. That's life in the quarantine. And we're still locked down hardcore here in LA. I know some of you guys out there watching the show, you may be in Europe or Asia or even just another part of America. And like life is kind of going back to normal for you. Like Australia and New Zealand, where things are, or like Australia and New Zealand, where it's basically back to normal almost. Or China just celebrated like this huge holiday over the weekend where like 6 million people traveled or whatever. That's not like that here in LA. It's just like it was on day one. So we're still suffering through it. But hopefully we're helping you guys get through all this insanity. We do have another offline episode of GameFace for you guys this week. We're hoping we can get back with a live streaming episode next week or the week after. Again, we're kind of beholden to the schedule of our TriCaster TD. It's actually been kind of good because I think the shows look and sound better, especially last week, than it ever has. Obviously, 1080p, 60 frames a second. We're recording our B-roll at high bit rates. The show looks great, but it is so much work for me. Everything the TriCaster just does automatically, and when the show's done, it's done. I have to do all that by hand now while we don't have a TD, and we're just unfortunately in a position where we don't have a choice. So anyway, the show looks better. However, financially, it has been a problem for us. I just checked yesterday at our Twitch Prime numbers, and they're literally cut in half right now for the month. And as I've said before, we need that money. It's not like extra bonus cash. Like we need it to pay our bills, to pay the bandwidth, to pay for our studio, which we literally use like 5 days a month now. Re-up in the studio ended up not being a great idea. But anyway, if you guys could take a moment to go to twitch.tv/siftedgames and literally just click that gift the sub button. It'll take you 5 seconds. It makes a huge difference for us. And again, because the show isn't streaming live, we're not getting all the Twitch Prime that we usually get. And again, we need it. So I'd really appreciate it if you take a second. I did have a link up in the header of Sifted for a couple days. It's going to go back up here in another day or two because we literally need the money. So anyway, if you take a minute to do that, we'd really appreciate it. We do have a great show for you today. 231, we got 3 pretty big games to talk about, some fun topics. I'm really excited to do it. But first, here's a word from our sponsor. Do you live life outdoors? DeShazer Ryan Realty has a nice level lot just outside of Libby, Montana that's perfect for you. With access to Crystal Lake via shared dock and boat ramp, it's an ideal location to build the getaway home of your dreams or just park your RV. Enjoy fishing, paddleboarding, kayaking, boating, and more just a few steps away. It can be yours for just $72.5. No matter where you live, contact Doug DeShazer at 406-291-1643 or deshazermt@gmail.com. Even if you're not looking for property in Montana, he can connect you with local realtors in your area who can help you. If you want to see more, head over to DeShazerRyanRealty.com. That's DeShazerRyanRealty.com. All right, once again, thanks to DeShazer Ryan Realty for sponsoring GameFace. Just like Twitch Prime, it makes a gigantic difference to our finances. So thank you very much. And again, let's keep the money in the family and support him if you can. Now, it's time for our poll of the week. I'll say this. I thought this was going to be the most popular poll of the week we've ever done. It ended up being the least popular poll of the week that we've ever done. I was way off on this one, and I think part of it might be that the story had broken way earlier than Matt and I talked about it, and then the poll went up after that. So the poll of the week was Xbox buying Bethesda. Home run, right? Everybody wants to voice their opinion on that. I think we got to you guys a little late to the point where you had kind of already digested it and figured out your opinion on it. So we did not get a crazy amount of responses, but we did get some great comments from you guys. Let's see. Let's look at the poll first. So there were 4 options. The first option was Xbox buying Bethesda. It makes me angry because I'm a PlayStation guy or girl. The second option was it's upsetting, but I kind of understand. Meaning if you're a PlayStation fan, you get that paying for publishers, paying for exclusive content is just part of the business. It's the way it works. The third option is it makes me bummed for others, but as an Xbox fan, I'm happy. So that option was for those Xbox fans who are very, very happy about the purchase, but also understand what it's like to be on the other side of the coin and being the person who isn't going to get those games going forward. And then the final option was just made me pre-order an Xbox, meaning it sealed the deal for you. It made you put down your $500. And with that, we will reveal the results. So as you can see, the most popular option was it's upsetting, but I kind of understand. So that's basically the perspective of the PlayStation fan who's, I'm not happy about this, but you know what? We've been the beneficiaries of exclusive, basically stuff that's been paid for in the past, and so I think they understand it. The second most popular was just made me pre-order an Xbox with 23%. So this purchase had a huge impact on your buying decisions. Again, surprised that because of that, we didn't get a huge response for this poll, but obviously you guys are really pumped about it. You think it's a big deal. The third most popular response, and right behind it with 21%, was makes me bummed for others, but as an Xbox fan, I'm happy. And again, that was the Xbox fan saying, sucks to be you, I get it, but yeah. And then the least popular option of all, with only 5% of the vote, was makes me angry because I'm a PlayStation guy or girl. So it doesn't look like too many of the dyed-in-the-wool PlayStation fans are all that upset about it. I think at this point, everyone kind of gets it, that it's just the nature of the business, and that's just kind of the way things are going to work going forward. So, Matt, anything that kind of struck your fancy with the results of that poll?
Not really. I mean, I also think that even if you're a PlayStation person, you probably have a PC as backup somewhere, and you'll be able to play Bethesda stuff on that. So, and also we still don't really know. I find it surprising that people would pre-order an Xbox at this point when you don't even know what they're going to do with Starfield or whatever years down the line.
I mean, it seems like it's starting to become more clear. Am I crazy for thinking that?
Maybe. I don't know if we're going to know until they come out and say what's happening with that. There might be deals still in place. They might have stuff going on. Clearly Sony was trying to buy Starfield for a while. Mm-hmm. It's just hard to say. And like we talked about before, we just don't know how the math shakes out. It might be more lucrative to Microsoft to reap the benefits of sales on other platforms versus trying to convince people to buy their hardware because they have to, because it's just, I don't know. It just seems like that's not really something they particularly care about at this point.
What struck me the most, honestly, was the kindness in this poll. Because if you look, the two middle options are basically, it's a part of business. I get that, but I do understand that it sucks for you. And I like that 72% of respondents were apathetic towards the other side, regardless of which side you were on. Everybody gets it. Like, it does suck when games become exclusive to a platform, but it's just the nature of the beast. So I like that you guys showed a lot of compassion in your responses. And I am surprised that only 5% said it made them angry. But again, I think that might be another function of the average age of the gamer on Sifted. You know, the average age is almost 40 years old. And so I think people are maybe a little more mature and look at things with a little bit more of a level head. We're pretty much a fanboy-free zone on Sifted. There's not a lot of, like, raging fanboys who come in and argue with people irrationally over their favorite console or their favorite game. Again, it's what I set out to do when I launched Sifted, was create a site where it would be that way. And it has actually worked out over time, because I think a lot of people come to the site and they don't fit in because they realize there aren't people here raging about the console wars. Like, what am I going to do here? I'll be bored. And they just leave. So
early on, there were a lot of Nintendo people like that.
But eventually, they all got squeezed out, too. You're right. In the beginning, a lot of Nintendo fans did come over, and they were acting like that. But eventually, they became toxic. They either got banned because they were acting like jerks, or they just felt out of place and left. So I'm proud to see the results of this poll, because it does show that what I set out to do with Sifted from the beginning is working, at least in some ways. So thanks for responding. I do have a couple comments from you guys that I want to read. The first one is from Magister. He says, I own nearly all Bethesda's games, but I do not really care about this, as first-person games are really not my thing. Now, if this makes more quality games come out from Bethesda and Microsoft, then great. I'll play them on PC. This will not cause me to buy an Xbox, today at least. He brings up a good point there. Like, we don't know everything yet. So maybe it's hard to say it's going to make you buy an Xbox, but I have a feeling that when we see that first real trailer for the Elder Scrolls 6, not just this little teaser thing that we've had to use for the last 2 years, when we see the first trailer of that game, I have a feeling some perspectives might start shifting pretty quick. And if Starfield is shown for the first time in full and it looks amazing, again, I think you'll start seeing more shifts in that other direction. So I understand what Magister is saying, but again, it's a little early to kind of figure out whether it's really going to have a huge impact yet. Let's see. Here's one from Erebus Jones. And he, for the record, he is excited about Xbox Series X. Just from being around him on the site a lot, he talks about it a lot. He plays everything else, he likes everything else, but he has been excited about Series X. And he says, I chose bummed for others, but I don't fully agree with the second sentence. I detest exclusive content. I'm still salty and boycotting the Avengers game because of Spider-Man, so to say anything else would be hypocritical. I like a man of his scruples. But not as an Xbox fan, rather a paid-up Game Pass subscriber. I'm really happy about this deal, as it's made that subscription even more valuable, and that's a great thing for me. I hope Bethesda games still come to other systems. I don't think they will. I tend to agree with him. I think we have another topic later on in the show where we're going to talk about how Bethesda is kind of distributing its stuff out right now. But I agree with him. I think on down the road, your chances of getting Bethesda games on PlayStation are going to be slim to none. And then here's one final comment from Toothless Gibbon. He says none of the above. He chose none of the options. And maybe that was the problem. Maybe a lot of people went to the poll and just never actually chose something. But he says none of the above. I believe the major IPs will still come to PlayStation, so I'm indifferent about it. I don't know, Toothless.
That's a bold move, Cotton.
Yeah, I don't know, bro. It would be pretty silly if Microsoft to allow like Elder Scrolls or Starfield to launch on PS5 day and date. It would be. At the very least, you're gonna have to wait. You're gonna have FOMO. You're gonna watch other people playing it for a year and a half before it comes to PlayStation. So there's going to be value there, I think, in the future. Now, not so much. But in a couple years when those games start rolling out from Bethesda, there is going to be a lot of value behind this. And that'll give Xbox a nice little kick in the pants for kind of the second lap, so to speak, around the 2 or 3 year mark. So it could work out well. So anyway, that's our poll of the week for episode 231. There will be a new poll up in the header at sifted.net here in the next couple of days. Make sure you jump in there and make your voice heard. And with that, it's time for the first real topic of GameFace 231, and we're going to discuss the biggest game that was released this week, at least in my opinion, and that game is Star Wars Squadrons. It is a Rogue Squadron-like-ish.
No, it's not.
It's really not. I was trying to warm it up, Matt, but you're right. It's not at all.
I've had this discussion with Rogue Squadron is an arcade shooter. This and X-Wing are flight sims.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't feel like it was too much of a sim. Squadron.
Well, it would be categorized as a flight sim in...
It's more in-depth than Rogue Squadron was, I'll say that.
It would be categorized as a flight sim in the 90s. Like, this is Wing Commander and X-Wing.
Okay.
And it doesn't have to be like Microsoft Flight Simulator to be a flight sim, but that's what we would describe these games as back in the day. It's hard to say what we do now because they don't fucking make them. You know, like, it's like this and Rebel Outlaw Galaxy and Ace Combat, and that's pretty much it. You know, like the accessible, and Ace Combat's even a little too arcadey for that. Like it's a lost genre, really.
It is. The setup for the game, it does have a plot and it does have a story. And I will say, one of the things I was pleasantly surprised by was how they presented the story. I really thought we'd get a lot of animated art stills with voiceover and text, but no. They have real-time rendered cinematics in the game, full voice acting, full facial animation, legit cinematics. Now, they're not mind-blowing or great, but they have them, and that was more than I actually expected. And then the plot basically follows a leader for the Empire who defects and joins the Rebels and then leads a squadron of rebels. And that's kind of how the whole thing kicks off. Were you surprised by the story, Matt? Did you think it had more or less story elements than you expected?
I mean, from what I'd seen in like the pre-release stuff, it's about what I expected. I do have some weird things. Like, so it's interesting. So it takes place after Return of the Jedi. Like the prologue mission takes place between Star Wars and Empire.
Yep.
Which is where the officer defects. And you play both sides. Like you start out on his squadron, and then it shifts to Rebel side, and you fly in on an X-wing, and he defects, and you escort him out. So it's kind of like, and that's the whole campaign. You switch back and forth as things go on. The one thing I was a little surprised by, was how, like you said, how full-fledged a lot of it was, like in terms of cinematics and in terms of like talking to characters between missions and stuff. But I was also surprised at how much it felt like a ton of stuff got gutted out of this game. Because like, part of it is because it's clearly built for VR. Like the hangar stuff is clearly like you're able to look around and look at people.
I wish in non-VR I had like a free look when I was in the ship, so I could look around and like get kind of because basically what I end up doing in this game is like tap X, shoot ship, tap X, shoot ship, and X is what switches your targets in the game, basically what you're locked onto. So if you just tap X, it'll lock onto a nearby ship, start following it on your radar, get behind it, shoot it, knock it out of the sky, hit X, find the next one, rinse and repeat. That's what I found myself doing in this game pretty much the whole time.
I mean, there's a lot of that there's nuance to it. Like if you double tap that button, like I'm playing on an Xbox, so unfortunately I didn't get to play it in VR yet. Because the person who wanted to play online with me wanted to play it on Xbox because she likes the controller better.
Okay.
But you double tap that button and it'll target whoever's targeting you.
Yeah.
Part of the problem, so I am pretty impressed. Like what I was saying about the gutted part is while there is clearly VR friendly, like when you talk to the different pilots, there's weird pauses between their thoughts and dialogue. And I would bet money that you were originally going to be able to talk to them with dialogue choices.
No.
And that they would react to you.
You mean like mid-mission? Like while the mission's going on?
No, like in the between mission stuff.
Oh,
like in the hangar.
Those little like vignettes where like in between like the fights where they start talking.
Right, because there's spaces in those for responses.
There is.
Yeah. And you can tell that they're in, and sometimes like, especially on the Imperial side, there's things where like it feels like they're reacting to something you would have said. And so like I with no evidence for it, I don't know anybody who worked on this game. I would argue that there was probably a time when not only was there supposed to be like branching dialogue choices, but you were supposed to be able to make them like or dislike you, and that would impact whether or not they followed your orders or helped you in the missions.
Oh, interesting.
Like I think that was probably part of the game originally.
I would be surprised, Matt, because the overarching kind of feeling that I have from this game is that it's a part of another game, and they just chopped it out and released it as its own game.
Well, it was, but I think when they chopped that out, I think they got ambitious.
Okay.
And then they had to scale it back. I think once they got kind of like, oh, we're going to let you do your own game. I think that's when the story got more full fledged, and like I think that was part of like, oh, we can make it like a little more, RPG-ish. And at a certain point, I think they just had to roll it back. But I think in the script, the way that the dialogue is delivered, but in the hangar sections, the script feels like it was written for dialogue choices to be part of it.
I'd agree with that. I've got that vibe before. I didn't pick up on that, but I could tell there was something disjointed and missing about the dialogue. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's what it is, and like it doesn't really matter. Like it's still there, gets the job done.
By the way, is great. I do want to say that. Like the voice work in this game is amazing. It's not the quality of the voiceover; it's how it's implemented. Yeah,
and they've got like it's a tech. You can just tell it's a presentational thing from the tech side more than it's not the voices are bad. I mean, they even got Dennis Lawson in to do Wedge. Yeah. There's a lot of like deep cuts in this. There's some references to some of the old games. There's references to Rebels, tons of references to Rebels, the CG cartoon series they did, including a couple characters who show up, which I really like because that's a really good show. I love that they put the freighters from the old games in. Yeah. Like that's the first time we've seen those pretty much since those old games, like those weird like flat ones with the big sides. Like those have not been seen since the old X-Wing TIE Fighter game. So that was cool. Yeah, I didn't
know that.
Those were only in those games. Huh. Like those were completely made up for those games. And it's like I
got tons of notes if you want me to start ripping them off.
Yeah, I mean, look.
One voice I didn't like was Vader's. I don't think Vader sounds anything like him.
They struggle with getting Vader right in all. They've always have, even back in the LucasArts days. Like sometimes they got it right. Sometimes they get someone who could do a good James Earl Jones impression, but it sounded like the processing was off. Like they never quite nailed. James Earl Jones died,
right?
No, James Earl Jones is alive
still. Okay.
Yeah, he's old,
Why didn't they
but
just
he's
get
alive.
him to do it?
A, he costs a lot. B, he's pretty much retired. And C, he costs a lot. Also, he doesn't really sound like. He also doesn't really sound like himself anymore.
So he can't really do the voice anymore.
If you watch Rogue One, that's him doing the voice, and you can tell he's
struggling.
Not the same.
Yeah, and that's age. Age affects people's voices for sure. It just made mine crack. Let's see. Great audio in general. I will say this. Yeah. I think that they used the Star Wars license very well. They pour the music on, the sound effects on. The audio in this game in general is just great. The sound, the surround sound, the 5.1, the channel separation, the location tracking, just incredible. And in this game, which I also did not play in VR because I didn't want to puke all over myself, in this game, the audio is a huge help, especially when there's people there's ships trailing behind you. You can tell where they are behind you using your satellite speaker. So the audio in this game is great. I feel like they did a good job using sort of those assets they were given for that stuff. Let's talk about how it plays, though. So you already said that it's more complicated than like the Rogue Squadron games. I would agree with that. But I don't think it's that much more complicated, to be honest. And I don't know if part of it is that because the Rogue Squadron games are so old, and I've played so many games since then, that I've just gotten more adaptive and better at control schemes like this, but I was able to jump into this and just take right off and start fighting like no problem.
Well, the dirty little secret about basic flight sim stuff is that it's not that hard. If it was, planes would crash more. And that's the thing is like the most of the difficulty I've had in adjusting to the controls in this game have been because of my expectations for what it is coming from the pedigree of the old games, and B, the weird layout they have as default. Like they do a thing with it where like the layout of how the game controls when in the default controls is basically like a first person shooter.
Yep. Which is probably why I was able to jump right in and start blasting.
Right. But like left stick is pitch up and down.
Yep.
And yaw left and right. So like just flat turn left, right.
Yep.
Right stick is throttle, which I hate. And roll.
See, Matt, I have them flipped, actually. My left stick is throttle and roll.
Right. You're right. No, you're right.
I didn't know if you flipped them, but that's how I
did flip them. I did flip them because that's all wrong. Like you steer the ship with your left thumb on the like that. To me, that's nonsense. That's on that side.
I did eventually adapt, but I'll tell you this, Matt, because the roll is on the same stick as accelerate and deaccelerate. My ship was always flying like half cocked.
Right.
So I'm always flying like this, and then I'm constantly having to tap left or right on the left stick to basically get the
Right.
orientation back. It's
And that's like something
crazy.
I don't like about it. Like they kept pretty much all the complexity of the old games. Like the power management's still there.
Yep.
The flight freedom is still there. Having to use all your targeting options to like keep track of where everything else is still there. Like they did not dumb this game down at all compared to the old games, in my opinion. I think they dumbed it down a little bit in the sense that they handhold you more during the missions and kind of like you got voices calling out like what you need to do next.
Well, there's a whole lot of following
but that's just
in this
modern,
game.
but that's just modern video game design.
Yeah, there's a lot of escort missions and following somebody through. Okay, now here's another skirmish. Finish the skirmish. Now follow me again, and then you follow them again, and then you get another skirmish.
I mean, that is this genre. That is what this. And there's two ways to go about that. There is the way this does it, which is like, okay, now this section of the mission's done, so you follow whoever to like the next section, and they sort of talk while that happens. Or there's the Wing Commander version, which when the action's over, you have the option to hit autopilot, and it just flies you through a quick cinematic to your next action sequence, which is how Rebel Galaxy Outlaw handles it. I might add. So that's just a philosophical difference. The X-Wing and TIE Fighter games have always made you sit through the boring parts. So that's true to form. I don't know if that's the real way to go about it. Granted, the story is pretty short. The meat of this game is the multiplayer. But here's my thing. So like we already talked. This game's
only about 7-8 hours ish.
I would say that's about right. Yeah. Also, like that's pretty good because look, there are some missions in the old games that are long. Like there are some hour-long escort missions in the X-Wing and TIE Fighter, and you don't need that anymore. No. So the controls on this game, like they're there. Like I don't like so I switched the controls around, right? Mm-hmm. Because like I moved having roll on a separate stick from pitch is nonsense to me because that's not how planes fly. Right. A plane stick is roll and pitch, and then the yaw is controlled usually with foot pedals from your for the rudder. Yeah. But I mean, if you want to put it on another stick, fine. You want to put it on. So a lot of games put it on the shoulder buttons, which is fine. Like Ace Combat puts it on the bumpers, which is fine. But I switched roll to the pitch stick. And the problem is this game has some weird bug in it when you do that. And people who use flight sticks and like hottest setups have discovered this first because they put roll on the flight stick, obviously, because that's where it's supposed to be. And when you try to pitch and roll at the same time on the same stick, it drops the control input by 50% for roll and pitch. So you are steering basically half as fast as you're supposed to when you're trying to pull a maneuver. And there's videos you can see online of this where people did it on PC where they did it with a stick and did it with a controller, and it's like this slow turn, and then they switch to keyboard and they get full input and it just rolls. Like it's like, oh, that's how fast the fucking A-Wing's supposed to turn over. Yeah. And like
they'll figure that out pretty quick.
So I had to switch it back to the other stick because when it's separate, it works fine. But I'm like, how in the world did that get through?
They didn't do everything. They didn't
try. And it's on all platforms. That's on PC and PS4 and Xbox. It's on all of them.
They never tested it. They never tried it.
I guess. Like, who the hell didn't do that?
I do think they'll fix that pretty quickly, though. That would probably be the first patch.
I don't know if they will. I don't know if they're even going to get a patch on this thing. They're getting very minimal support. They're not planning any DLC. Like there's basically like a one-off almost. So hopefully they do get to address some stuff. It is an online game. You want it to survive it all. You're going to have to do some patches.
I think they're just trying to recoup like the first 3 or 4 years of Motive, honestly.
Maybe. I mean, but it's like that is really disappointing. And I can play it with the other stick, but like it's not comfortable and it doesn't work right. And I really, talking to some of my friends who are younger and never played the old games, I recognize that I am coming to this from a very different perspective as someone who loves flight games, and it just doesn't play right. And that hampers my ability, not just my ability to enjoy it, my ability to fucking play it properly. Right. I have a hard time effectively dogfighting with roll on a separate stick from pitch. It's just completely unnatural to me.
I hear you.
So I'm disappointed in that. And it actually puts a damper on wanting to play it. Like there are moments where I'm just like, oh, I could play Squadrons, and then I got to deal with a fucking roll thing.
I burned out on this game pretty quick. I'll be honest.
I played a fair amount of online, and I enjoy it. Like I enjoy it. It's good. The presentation's great. Like it's really cool to see all this stuff that I loved from these old primitive PC games portrayed with modern tech, modern sound, like you said, the graphics, the fact that it's as busy as a Star Wars battle should be, as opposed to like 5 TIE fighters versus you before, where the TIE fighters come in and there's like 10 of them, and it's like there's a whole soup going on. That's great. Like all all this stuff's great. Attacking, the big ships is great because you see all the different guns and they're all coming at you and you can target the separate systems. And like, there's a lot of really cool ideas in here. I disagree with the control choices, and obviously I wouldn't have a problem with control choices if my adaptation for the control changes I made worked, but they don't because someone didn't test something properly. Also, I like that they kept all the power assignment stuff.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up actually.
But
well, you should explain what it is first, Matt.
Like the power assignment thing, in the old games, it was a little simpler, actually. So I credit to them for making a little more complexity happen on this and make the power management more of a constant thing you have to do, which I actually like. So in these games, this game and the old games, you have a certain level of power you can assign to various categories. You have 3 categories: engines, lasers, and shields. If you're flying a TIE fighter with no shields, all you have are engines and lasers.
Wait, throttle, right? I thought you could tweak throttle as well.
Throttle is engines.
Oh, okay.
Engines affects throttle, obviously, because that gives you more power to the engines. So you can swap back and forth between it. This is actually a little simplified because in the old games there were 3 levels of power or 0 power. This is like you basically just pick which system you want to max out, or you can balance all 3.
Yeah, you just tap the D-pad in a direction, and you can funnel all your power to lasers. So if you're in a battle, your lasers suddenly get a lot more power. If you're facing ships that are more powerful, you can initiate a shield that will protect you more. So you can basically shift the capabilities of your craft based upon whatever's happening in the game. More
importantly, they don't let it run down. Like if they up the recharge rate, and then there's a bonus to the new thing on this is there's a bonus to kind of like what you get from the recharge. So in the old games, you had to kind of use full charge to get like the overcharge on the lasers or the overcharge on the shields, and they would burn out. They would basically wear off if you took that power away from that system. And this, the bonus pretty much lasts a lot longer. So it is an actual viable strategy now to, as you're heading into a fight, you charge shields and you get that overcharge on your shield, and then you switch to your lasers, so you get your overcharge on your lasers, and that overcharge on your shield will stick around for a while. So like you can kind of prepare for a fight, which is nice.
As the more I played, the more I started to play around with that stuff.
Yeah, the thing I don't like about what they changed there is the engines. So if you charge the engines, it will start charging a bar that is basically a boost bar. And when you hit the boost, it just, obviously gives you a huge boost in speed.
It lasts a long time, too.
But it lasts for a while if you let it charge up all the way. But the thing is, the move, they added a thing where you can boost drift. Where when you're moving quickly from a boost, you hold the I think it's right stick,
this game.
And
it's
you can kind of do this like weird drift turn.
Yeah.
And that is basically how you have to fight in multiplayer, or you are never going to get your fucking target on somebody.
Yeah, I was going to bring up
and I feel like that breaks the flight aspect of things to the point that I don't feel like I'm playing a dogfighting game anymore. I feel like I'm playing some weird video game.
Well, I feel like it doesn't break the mold of dogfighting video games. A lot of the same problems I had with like the multiplayer modes in Star Fox 64, I still have here. And it's that the game just turns into this, it's just everyone chasing each other's tails. And you're right, there is like that crazy drift turn. I never got really good at it to where I felt confident using it, but it is in there. I just wish there were easier ways to just do a U-turn or just do a complete loop so someone flies under you. Like, though, even the things that were in like Star Fox 64, I wish there were ways to do that, because a lot of this game, even when you're playing the campaign, it's just, you're just chasing, just going in circles, chasing after ships in this black expanse. And it started to wear thin for me after a while, because one thing I was getting at earlier when I started talking about Rogue Squadron is that this game doesn't have any ground-based missions. And Rogue Squadron was mostly ground-based, and they give you a couple like free flight missions in space just to say they were there. But regardless of which one you like more, it breaks up the monotony. Having a couple ground missions where you're like flying into a base and taking out all the stuff like that, it breaks up all the space stuff. And in this game, that's all there is just shooting in space. And again, just kind of endemic to the genre. It just feels really slow a lot of the time because you're just in this blackness. And if you don't have any objects to use for a reference, you have no idea how fast you're going. So in like a lot of space shooting games, it seems like you're moving a mile an hour, and then you get to a ship and you come up on it and like you realize how fast you're going. And again, it's hard to ding the game for this stuff because if you're going to make a full 3D space shooter in space, this is kind of the stuff that's going to happen. But they're just things that kind of turn me off. I also had problems continuing to play this game, Matt. I really lost interest after like 2 or 3 hours. I just felt like I wasn't experiencing anything that I hadn't experienced before in a game. And then, having played all the Rogue Squadron games, I enjoy those more. I like them more than this game because they do break things up. There is a little more variety. I do like.
They're also completely different games.
They are,
that's
but I think most people are going to compare them.
I think that most people are wrong then.
Well, you're probably right. Most people are wrong all the time.
And look, there's a whole generation that's more familiar with Rogue Squadron as how X-Wings fly than this. Yep. And so that comparison is inevitably going to be drawn, but it's like being upset. It's like comparing Dark Souls to Zelda to me.
It felt very similar to me. Again, because Rogue Squadron does have space missions. I mean,
they do, but they are not flight sims. They do not. You can't loop in. There's no dogfighting in Rogue Squadron. It's all on a plane. It's
all I know is I've played a lot of Rogue Squadron, and I played probably 4 hours of this game, and the vast majority of it felt exactly like playing Rogue Squadron to me, except not as fun or as interesting.
Well, see, I don't agree with that in any way. Like Rogue Squadron to me is like. For years, I love the Rogue Squadrons. You know that. I had to review them for a couple of them for the show. Yep. But to me, the Rogue Squadrons were good enough. If they're not going to make any more X-Wing and TIE Fighter games, that sucks. But Rogue Squadron's close enough.
Someone who's a huge fan of those more semi-sims, for lack of a better phrase.
And you're right. Flying around through space, there's only so much you can do. I do not want ground missions. It would never occur to me to want them in this game. That is not what it's about. Although I bet you if this game does well and they get to make a full-fledged game, like a sequel or a game that is not just, like you said, what was going to be an expansion to Battlefront 2 that was then cut out and made its own standalone thing. If they got to make a full-fledged $60 game out of this, I bet they would add.
It would be stuff. Probably more like Rogue Squadron,
if only to make the bombers feel like they have more of a purpose. They have a purpose,
yeah. It's funny, bombers in space. It's like there's no gravity. Do the bombs have some magnet on them that make them go to the ship or something?
They basically have heavy. They're heavy weapons. They're like a big punch to the capital ships, right? Yeah. But you can do bombing. And they do. There's a mission about halfway through the game where you have to do kind of like a trench run sort of thing in a space station facility. But you could totally do that on the ground. And ground based stuff has been more of a thing in the Disney era Star Wars.
That's true. I didn't even think about that.
There's ground battles in Force Awakens and with the X-Wings and everything. In the atmosphere, we'd never seen that before. That had never been done before, largely because of technological limitations when the other movies were made. But it was always the shot of the X-Wings flying over the water in Force Awakens, that's from an old concept art painting.
Oh, really? And they finally brought it to life for that film.
Well, they've wanted to do that forever, but the tech just wasn't there to do it. Now you got digital stuff, and you can we can finally do an X-Wing TIE fighter fight in the atmosphere, and it looks great.
Yep.
So I think that would be certainly up there on their list of things to do if they did another one of these.
Should they do another one?
I would like to see them take another shot at it. Yeah,
me too. I would like to see a more robust, all in. Yeah. Let's give them 3 years to make a game and see what they can do. Because I think even just some of the stuff that's leaked out of that studio, they can do storytelling. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, here's the thing though. And the story, the story's fine. But part of my problem with it is it's in the same mold of everything that is done with Star Wars in the Disney era, which is everything's got to be a fucking big deal. Yeah. Everything's got to. There's a secret project, and we're building this super weapon ship, and they want to stop it, and we got to stop them from stopping us. We got to get this secret thing over there. The old games were just you were a pilot.
Yeah.
In the rebellion, you were a pilot in the Empire, and you got to get through your career. And you end up in the middle of some of the big battles in the movies, and you get in TIE Fighter, you got drafted into the Emperor's secret ranks because you were so good at it, and you can just. But I would love if they did a full-fledged one. I'd love for to be able to pick Rebel or Empire. Don't make me mix the two. I feel like that's a little jumbly. And
yeah, it's a little weird.
And I also have some friends who they don't want to play the other side. Like they're like I want to play Empire and I don't want to deal with the Rebel stuff, or I only want to play Rebels because I don't want to be space Nazis kind of thing. So separate them out would be cool, and like just let you play like more of a slice of, I mean, I don't know, slice of life, but like I think you can take these interesting characters and all this like storytelling and just make it a little more average person, you know, like, you know what I mean? Like tell the story of a career, and like maybe that career can become something, you know, important, and it can build to something. Sure. But I love, obviously they didn't have the time to do something that expansive on this, but I'd love to see it start really mundane. Let you see kind of like, you know, what it's like to be in this organization, and then kind of rise up.
Yeah.
And rise up, and eventually you're like, oh, like this, you're pretty good. Like we should bring you into some of these other missions, and now you're part of like the, you know, Princess Leia's secret squadron or something. Like now you're doing some crazy shit. Idea. Like that would be the way I'd go with it. Because right now I feel like this, like when you say like, you know, that the gameplay feels too much like the same, to me the storytelling feels too much the same. Not in the sense of like the writing's bad, but in the sense that tonally and structurally it's just the same story we've seen come out of Disney era Star Wars, except for Last Jedi, because Rian Johnson is a genius. Is the same kind of thing we've seen over and over again, where it's like everything has to have a super weapon, everything has to be for the fate of the universe, everything has to be the most important thing that's ever happened. You know, it's like you can just tell a story. It's one of the reasons Mandalorian's so good.
Yeah,
because it's just about these characters. It's, you know, and maybe there's like huge implications underneath, but it's really about these characters.
You know why they do that though? Because if you do that, then it's about the writing.
Right. I know.
It's way harder. It's very easy to just build something and blow it up. It's very hard to craft a compelling story.
Oh, I know. J.J. Abrams literally blew up the whole franchise with Episode 9. Like, I mean, we know what that's all about. I'm just saying, like, there's room to play in Star Wars if you let it have the breadth.
I agree 1,000%.
And obviously, this is not the game for that, but it's just a thing where, like, I feel like the same. You know what I was talking about having stuff cut out of the conversations or the between mission stuff. I feel that happening in Fallen Order too. Like, I feel like there was originally a lot more robust conversations with your other characters and crew members.
Yeah, you talked about that when it came out.
They had to pull that out a little bit. And it's just weird to me how EA constantly kills the atmosphere first.
I think it's just them chopping to get the game out in
I think it is too.
I mean,
I agree.
Let's be honest, it's EA, Matt. Like, I don't think there's a whole lot of artistry going on with that stuff. It's like, look, you do some chopping.
Right, but I think the people who are making these games are trying to do that. I think the artistry is there with the people developing these things. Like, and I bet there's a lot of people in Motive who are very disappointed they didn't get to make the game that was in their heads. I mean, I know every game developer feels that way about every game they make, probably. But as you know, I may never get a game like this again.
It's
like
true.
They may never try to do it again.
Yeah. But it bums me out that it isn't better than it is. But at the same time, it's $40. I mean, that's something we haven't brought up yet. It is a budgeted discount game. I'm 100% okay spending $40 on this game, even though I don't love it. Matt mentioned that the multiplayer modes are really kind of the meat of this game, and he's right. But it needs more multiplayer modes. Right now,
it does. Well, because it's only got two things.
Is it going to ever get more?
It doesn't sound like it. It's got dogfight and it's got fleet battles.
5-on-5 dogfighting, and then the fleet battles are kind of cool though. They're like these kind of like multi-stage like events more than just like skirmishes.
And they're kind of a tug of war thing. Like you have to. And
that's the only one that's ranked too. The dogfighting isn't even ranked. So.
Yeah, which is weird. And then you got to you earn basically in-game currency to buy new upgrades for your ships and cosmetic things for your ships and cosmetic things for your pilot.
Legit upgrades, though, we should say. Like, some of the ship upgrades are real. They aren't.
Oh yeah, you can mess with stuff a lot, and like usually they're not like just straight upgrades. Usually they are. Oh, this gives you this much more hull resistance, but you drop speed somehow or whatever.
Usually,
but you can come up with some really interesting builds with it. Like people have. You know, like I didn't like my favorite ship in all of Star Wars is the TIE Interceptor, and I didn't like how the Interceptor played when I first tried it out. But then, like once I put a couple of upgrades and tweaked it to the way I like to play them, like it became much more like what was in my head of how a TIE Interceptor should fly.
No, you can definitely feel the difference for sure.
Yeah, and I like what they did with the Interceptor and the A-Wing are my two favorite ships in the series, really. And like they're both interceptors, they're both very fast, but they did a good thing in this game that they didn't do in the old games, where the Interceptor and the A-Wing hit real hard. like they can chew through an average ship like twice as fast as an X-Wing. And really all that means is they are massive glass cannons, and they leaned into that really hard on this game, and I really like that. Like a lot of their decisions in this game, for all my criticism, were really good. For something that hasn't really been depicted since 1998, like they updated a lot of this stuff pretty much perfectly. It's just, it needs to have more. And I was also kind of hoping that they might add some DLC that put the B-Wing and the TIE Defender in there. But it sounds like they're not going to get any DLC unless this thing is a runaway hit. And I really don't know if it is, judging by its numbers on Twitch.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it. UK sales over the weekend were not extraordinary.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, is there a physical version? Is there a physical copy?
Actually, I don't know if there is. That's a good point. I don't think there is. Yeah, I didn't see it in the UK charts at all. That would explain it.
Yeah.
But it is $40. It is cheap. Again, if you're a Star Wars fan, 100% go buy it. And I am, and that's why I'm recommending that at $40 you should pick it up, even though I'm not completely loving it. If you're not a Star Wars fan, I think if you're a fan of flight sims, you should just buy it, because you're not getting any of these.
Yeah, although be aware of the roll issue.
Yeah.
Which again works if you can deal with roll and pitch on a separate stick, but
I still think
that
that's
is
one
ridiculous.
Thing they'll fix. I think if they have to issue a patch just to fix that, they will do that. New content, who knows? But something like that, I feel like they have to.
Yeah, I doubt. I mean, it has reviewed well, so maybe EA will lean into it that way. But like, I think you probably are right when you say that they're just trying to squeeze some residual revenue out of Motive after all this time.
Yeah. The other thing that we should have mentioned, too, is that if you are into VR, and I haven't tried it and Matt hasn't tried it, but all reports have been that the VR in this is amazing. It is a great VR game. So if you're looking for your next VR fix, this is a great option.
Yeah. I mean, it does come out of the VR mission they made for Rogue to promote Rogue One on the old Battlefront.
Which was great.
And like, you know, if you get like a full, like I have a couple friends who did the VR thing with a full stick and throttle setup and like all that. And like, and the like video, and one guy's wife took video of him playing it for the first time, and you could see tears come out from under the VR helmet. Like, this is affecting people. Like, people are like, I got to fly an X-Wing, and I get it. Like, it's right. It is right there. Especially if you turn off. There's an instrument mode basically where you turn off all the HUD assistance, and basically you only can run off the instruments in the ship.
Yeah, you actually touch like the buttons and stuff.
Yeah, with the way, like, you know, it kind of like in a hangar where you look at the buttons, and that was in the Rogue One mission too, where you could hit the button to like open and close the cockpit or open and close the wings on the X-wing, or you could use the controller to touch the button on the side of the cockpit, and they all worked, and that was really cool too. So now you got TIE fighters and all the other ships to look at too. Like, and they know that because in the hangar stuff you can inspect the ships and just sit in the cockpit and look around. Oh, yeah. And in VR, obviously, that's going to be a lot more impactful.
Yeah, so this game in general is more impactful if you're a big VR player.
I will definitely, especially if they fix the roll problem, I will buy it again on PlayStation 4 and play it in VR. I will definitely do that. But they need to fix that roll problem. Yep. Like, that is the big issue. Really basic stuff. It's I think they will. I hope so, because right now it's like if you were holding B in a Mario game and hit jump, he only jumped half as high.
That's
how bad that is to someone who's trying to play this as that is awful, like unbelievable. Yep. And there's ways to fix it on PC, but there's no way to fix it on a console without a patch.
Yep. So there you go. That's Star Wars Squadrons. Again, just $40, so it is a cheaper game. Matt, you actually didn't say if you recommend buying it or not.
It all depends on whether you want to put roll and pitch on the same stick and whether they fix that. But beyond that, if you can deal with a separate and you like Star Wars and especially Starfighter stuff. I mean, it's functional. I just don't prefer it. Be ready for that. But otherwise, I mean, you're never going to get another game that looks this good and does what it does. So other than going back and playing X-Wing TIE Fighter again. So do it. Support it. Also, that's it. Support it.
Support it.
Like, support this kind of game.
You want more of it, you got to pay for it when it comes out.
Even if it comes down to, like, supporting it to show that whoever gets the license next should make another one.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yep. So we're actually shifting from one EA game to another. One new EA game to an old EA game that is being revived, and that is Need for Speed Hot Pursuit from 2010 is being remade. It's coming to PC, PS4, Xbox One on November 6th. And then it comes on November 13th to Switch a week later. It's including
a remaster of a remake. That's impressive.
Yeah. I don't know if this... Yeah, I guess you're right. It's a remaster of a remake. The 2010 game was basically a remake of Hot Pursuit, or at least a reboot. And now they're remastering that remake/reboot.
Mm-hmm.
Why?
This is my question.
Why is this happening, Matt? Why are all these old Need for Speed games coming back? Is it they can't make a good new one? Is that why this is happening?
I mean, I think that's probably part of it, yeah. It's also, I think, they're trying to put something out in that genre, and they don't have anything right now.
Criterion is working on a new game right now.
Yeah. The thing I don't get is look, this is a good game. It's Criterion's first Need for Speed game. It turned out pretty well.
It also introduced Autolog, which ended up becoming this huge thing that ended up being duplicated and copied with varying degrees of success across the industry for like the next 4 years.
Yeah. And
we should explain. Autolog is basically just this always live social network inside the game. Where you can challenge people to races and things like that just on the fly. Back in 2010, that was a revelation.
Yeah, it was basically constant meta mingle player.
It was a huge deal.
It was
when
a cool
it came
idea.
out, everybody knew what Autolog was. And you even started seeing it then in shooters and all this other stuff.
Yeah, EA put some version of it in almost everything they made for the next few years.
Yeah.
It was a big.
And it's still here in this, actually. It's still there.
And I did too. I had to do I had to go to England and do. This is one of the games I had to do a preview interview thing with. And oh my god, all they talked about was Autolog. It was just Autolog.
New feature, the groundbreaking. But
it was like those things that always happened back then, where it's oh, there's a new feature. Like, cool. Can we get footage of it? We don't know.
It's not ready yet.
It's not going to be in the fucking segment, is it? So or we're just going to show random racing. We talk about this thing we can't illustrate. Cool.
Yeah.
But I really like this game. I will say, is not the game I would choose to remaster, in part because I think if you can play it on modern or last gen consoles or backwards compatible pretty well.
Well, that's the thing. That's the whole thing about this. So people are okay,
why aren't they remastering the old Underground games? That would be my target.
Because then you see a huge jump.
Right.
It's you can already you can already play this on the Xbox One X.
Yeah, or PC.
Right, and it already looks amazing. And in fact, they haven't
fine.
done that much work to this at all. They've hardly touched up the visuals at all. It was already a really good-looking game back in 2010. So I don't know where the audience is for this. It's not old enough. I mean, most people who are gamers now were gamers back in 2010. It's only 10 years ago. So I don't know what...
10 years isn't that bad for a game that was maybe going to be trapped on a previous system.
Right.
But this isn't. This has been brought forward pretty easily. I still think if you want to remaster stuff that people would be interested in, go back to stuff like Underground.
Agreed. If you remade Underground, it would be the best-selling Need for Speed since Underground. I guarantee it.
Or at least go back to actual Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit. Which is a
where
game.
You see a big upgrade from the remaster or the remake. Here, it's okay, now it's running in 4K. Is that really have any weight?
Or here's something. Burnout 3, you cowards. Why have you not put Burnout 3, the best Burnout, on your remaster list? That's real fucking... And I can't play that on anything today. So
what is going on with EA, though? Why is it dredging up all these old games that weren't all that... I mean, it's not that the game isn't great, but they just didn't sell all that well the first time. I mean, is that why they're trying to recoup money from a decade ago? I don't think so.
But to me, it feels like they just want content in the pipeline,
I mean, some of it I get because a lot of these games are coming to Switch. And EA has not really supported Switch at all. And I'm sure it's looking at those unit sales every month and they're like, how can we get in on that action? And maybe this is really just a Switch play. And they're like, well, if we're going to do a Switch version, we might as well release it for the other things because that's easy.
And it's free money, an extra SKU out there. That's fine. But I don't know. It feels like you could go for the burn. I mean, I guess Need for Speed has more name recognition at this point, but Burnout's better. The Burnout games are better games. And then where do you go from this? It's you're gonna do a remaster of Most Wanted. That's another game that's already still playable on modern systems. That's what I don't get. Is you're not bringing me anything I can't play already. It's at least the Crash Bandicoot games were and Spyro were okay. Not only are these remakes and they look way better than from the ground up, but they actually are games that I can't play on anything I own except maybe the old PS3 or something. I just don't. Yeah, it would be. I would perk up more if it was one of the old Need for Speeds like that. I can't play on a modern system anymore. The Undergrounds or even Pro Street or like that kind of PS2 Xbox era.
Yeah, where you actually will see the upgrades if they remake the games instead of this stuff.
Yeah,
I really do think it's just a Switch play. EA has treated Nintendo like crap for so long. It's always this story. Like EA never wants to support Nintendo. Then Nintendo has a hit, like the Wii or the Switch, and then EA's like, oh my gosh, now we need to work with Nintendo. And they never really go full throat into it. It's always these half-assed, like, boom blocks, like, let's put 10 people on a project and see what they come up with. They never dedicate resources to Nintendo platforms, ever.
I think Boomblocks was pretty legit, though.
Oh, it was great. I loved the game.
For the Wii, that was kind of the perfect game for the system.
I mean, it was, but at the same time, again, it was like a 10-person team that worked on that game, and the budget was probably like $10 million or whatever. Like, they've never...
Yeah, I mean, they had Spielberg. It was something.
Yeah, they've never put their financial weight behind games for Nintendo platforms.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely funny when like they were like, oh, Steven Spielberg's working on a Wii game.
Yeah.
And it's like everyone's like, oh, what's that going to be? It was Boom Blocks.
It was basically Jenga for the Wii.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jenga with firecrackers.
Pretty much. Firecrackers in some of the cracks.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was a great game.
It was great.
But legitimately, like a 10-person team, $10 million to make that game. EA has never invested in Nintendo platforms. It's always been an afterthought, or EA has tried to find a way to support those platforms as cheaply as possible, and this just reeks of it to me.
Well, I don't know. I won't fault them on the Wii for that because everybody did that. The Wii was a shovelware machine.
But
to
you can go back to the
parties.
N64. I mean, you can just go to every platform Nintendo's had since like the SNES, and it's been that way.
Yeah, everything post Super Nintendo, like kind of the way Nintendo went with their hardware was sort of the opposite direction of how EA wanted to go with their games.
Yeah.
EA
PlayStation was the leader, and EA's going to always follow the leader.
Well, also because EA just wanted to lean in the CD stuff. Everybody did except Nintendo.
Storage.
And then with and Nintendo always has that kind of like weird thing where it's like, well, we're gonna do it, but we're gonna add this weird little thing that makes it harder to do for no good reason, like the GameCube. It's DVDs, discs, but they're half the size of everything else for no fucking reason
and now
whatsoever.
They're using like SD cards for games,
right?
With some kind of
and putting on an underpowered system, which it sounds like maybe that will be solved a little bit next year when the new system comes out, because like they're doing the thing with, like, there's all these rules about the frame rate needs to be unlocked because one day we might want to make them run at a higher frame rate. It's like, oh, it's interesting. EA has always been a little trepidatious about dealing with Nintendo. I don't know where that really comes from. Even going back to the fact that Madden really came to power on the Genesis first.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that's about, but this probably is one of those things where like, oh, we'll just throw this stuff out there. And like, again, it's just content in the pipeline. Even looking at their releases for every system, EA doesn't put much out anymore.
I know. It's like they put out their sports games and that's it. It's really crazy. And Star Wars, that's all it's got right now. It's really crazy. We should mention, though, that they have added like 6 hours of content to the game for this re-release, so there is some value. There's 6 hours of new content. It has cross-play multiplayer, so you can play against other people on other platforms, including Switch once it finally comes out. And they've also added car wraps. They asked them about next gen. They said it will play on PS5 and Xbox Series X, meaning that it's set up so that backwards compatibility will work on both of those machines. So
and that seems to be a rule now.
It does, and it's good. I'm glad that it's there. It needs to be there. So there you go. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit Remake coming November 6th to PC, PS4, and Xbox One, and a week later on November 13th to Switch.
So if you'd like to stop playing Watch Dogs Legion for a while and do that instead for some reason.
Well, if you're a Switch owner.
True.
What else are you playing? Let's be honest.
You're waiting for that Pokemon DLC.
Well, I'm actually, that segues nicely into our next topic, which is something that people will be playing on Switch right around that time, but, a little bit earlier. And that is that Steve and Alex from Minecraft are coming to Super Smash Brothers. I wouldn't say that I would have never thought that they would make it, because Microsoft does own Minecraft, but I think if you'd asked me if they would ever show up, I'd be like, I don't know how they would do it right and have it make sense. And now that I've seen how they're doing it, I was right. Like, It wasn't easy. I can't believe that they've done this for Smash Brothers. Matt, have you checked out what these characters can do inside the game?
Yeah, I mean, I watched the videos of it. I don't really understand it.
It's crazy.
It definitely looks like one of the most complicated things they've ever put in that game.
Well, I got a press release from Nintendo, and I think Nintendo knew that people were going to be confused because in the press release, they literally spelled it out line by line exactly how it all works. They actually are collecting resources during the fight. And every stage that you're on, that will alter what resources that you can collect. The resources that they have in the game as of right now are, I have a list here somewhere. If I can find it. Oh, it's dirt, wood, stone, iron, gold, and diamond. All those different resources you can collect, actually mine while you're playing the game, and then you use those resources to go to a bench to build stuff while the game is going on. Matt, I don't know how this is going to work. Like it appears that the crafting is really fast, so you're not going to have to spend you're not going to have to walk over to a bench, hit a button, wait for it to load or anything like that. But also the stuff that you can build is crazy. Like you can build blocks and then put them where you want them and create constructions to defensive walls that you can build in front of yourself. I don't know how all this stuff is going to play out in real time in a fighting game as fast and flashy as Smash Bros. The work that had to be done for this, to me...
I don't know. I think the Fortnite generation can do it.
No, I'm not. I mean, the kids will totally be able to do it.
Yeah.
Will I be able to? I don't know. I'm talking about developing this and implementing it into Smash Brothers with all the other stuff that happens in Smash Brothers.
Well, Sakurai pretty much said it's all right, you want to put Minecraft in this thing? I'm gonna do it up. Basically,
did. It's insane.
And that's what he did.
Yeah, I mean, there's full on gathering resources, crafting, and then using the things that you crafted in the fights.
Actually, you know what it reminds me of is Phoenix Wright in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, who played. He was added as DLC, is what the expansion thing they did, and to get his best moves and to kind of expand his ability to do combo stuff and do the damage you need to do, and get his best ultimate. You have to basically do moves that summon random items, and then you have to tell whether the items they drop are like a red herring or an important clue, and you have to pick up the clue and not get hit while you're doing it. And then once you gather all the clues correctly, you can accuse the opponent of doing whatever they did.
Awesome.
And then that's how you get your top ultimate move out of it. So watching someone play that in a tournament was you had to do the combo, pull the clue down, get them on the ground again so you could pick up the clue, and then organize, and you had to organize them, I think, in a certain order or something. It was.
You're right.
It was
though.
a whole metagame on that, and so I wouldn't be surprised if they looked at that as sort of a template for how do we make this weird meta thing happen. I mean, it's really neat. I don't know if that's going to be a stock character in tournaments going forward, but I bet people will try.
They've done an amazing job. The animations are just just arm chop. They have not sacrificed anything from Minecraft to get them into Smash. We should also mention this is the second character singular. Of the second fighter pass. Now, you're getting both Steve and Alex, but they're technically just one character. And you also get 2 skins for them. You get one for the zombie and one for Enderman. And you can just put them in those skins and fight with those characters if you want as well. I was shocked when I first started watching the presentation for this, and they were showing this stuff happening. I just figured that it was just quarter circle towards an A, and they just did it. But no, it's this crazy process that you have to go through in the middle of a fight. The other thing, too, is you have to do it because the weapons break, just like in Minecraft. So if you keep using their sword or their pick, they break, and if you don't craft another one in the game, you have no weapon. So it's going to force you to use all the crafting stuff from Minecraft inside Smash, which I think is smart, because I think a lot of people might just avoid it if that weren't the case. But yeah, crafting table appears on the stage. You go up to it, you craft, and then you decide how you want to implement what you crafted. There's a new stage, a new Minecraft stage that's also going to be added. And inside that stage, there are 6 new areas inside the stage. There's 7 new songs that are going to be added to the soundtrack for Minecraft. I don't know that I remember a single Minecraft song, but I'm sure kids do. But I don't remember any. And then also the new stage, which is called Minecraft World. You can choose day or night, and if you fight at night, the zombies come out and come onto the stage, just like in Minecraft. As you know, at nighttime, the zombies show up, and you have to sort of protect your abode from them. So this is like a flawless execution, Matt, of bringing Minecraft into Smash Bros. I can see now why it's taken a while. They said they've been working on this for like 2 years with Microsoft behind the scenes to secure the license and figure out how it was going to work and then to implement it. And you can see it. Like, I have not really cared much about the DLC fighters for Smash, but this one I do. Like, even though I may not go and play it and learn how to play it, I will absolutely go and watch Let's Plays and YouTubers who are really good at Smash taking these characters over and working it. I want to see how it works, particularly within the context of a live match where somebody else is trying to pummel the snot out of you. So I think this is brilliant. Like, it really, really impressive. Wasn't even aware of Phoenix Wright as far as what he did inside the game. This is the first time I've heard of something like this inside a fighting game. So
this is way more complicated than what Phoenix Wright was doing. It sounds, from what I can see, but also, like, there's people that know Smash Brothers so well that this will probably be a breath of fresh air to them to have like all this extra like complications to have to deal with during a match. Like, that's be interesting to see like a match of like 4 Steves.
Yeah,
and everybody's running around trying to gather stuff and build
like,
stuff.
I wonder too if like they've accounted for that. What happens if there's 4 Steves, they're all building stuff? Like, is the game gonna just melt and like crash? Like, I hope they've tested all that stuff, because that could put a big strain on the poor Switch. But I'm guessing they did. It is Nintendo, and they're pretty on stuff like that. And then a couple other notes that we got kind of around that announcement. There are 3 new amiibo coming next year. Banjo-Kazooie, Byleth from Fire Emblem, and Terry Bogard. It's weird that they've taken so long to put out the amiibo for characters that have been in the game for
I don't know what happened to the amiibo thing. Like, you remember when like they used to put out like 40 a year?
Yeah, like 5 for each game.
And now there's like 3
I know.
a year.
I mean, it's not like they stopped selling. People still love them. No. They put them up for sale, and they sell out in like 5 minutes. They
vanish like crazy. I had to work fast to get my my Richter and Simon ones.
I will definitely be buying the Banjo one. For sure.
I'll get the Banjo one, yeah.
Yeah, I'm very picky.
I'll get the Terry Bogard one, too. I never thought there'd be a fucking Terry Bogard amiibo.
It's crazy.
I know he's been in the game forever, but, like, it's just... Yeah, so, I mean, I do like the Smash Brothers.
They're not launching until next year. All 3 of these amiibo are until 2021.
I do like that Smash Brothers has kind of just become, like, a general celebration of games.
It really has, And everyone's, like, cool with it
minus Sony stuff, obviously.
Sony is the only publisher left who can't get over itself enough and admit defeat that it can't make a game better to allow its characters to be.
Yeah, it really should hit a point where it's just like, look, you really want to try Sony All-Stars again? Or you just want to, like,
I think they will. I think there'll be a sequel.
Or you just want to fucking call it a day and put like
put some characters in Smash.
Put Ratchet in there and call it like it's
makes too much sense. Nah. So anyway, also
makes too much sense. That's why Sony will never do it.
Yep. There's also a bunch of new Mii skins coming specifically for Minecraft and for No More Heroes and for Bomberman and a couple other IPs. So
I wonder if Travis will get in there.
I don't know.
I think he's already in there as like a trophy assist or something maybe, but like be interesting to have him as an actual character.
Yeah. But this is the most elaborate Smash Brothers DLC character ever. The most work that's gone into it. I think the most adjustment from players in playing the character, although Joker was probably close in that regard from Persona. You watch him in Smash, he doesn't look like he belongs in Smash. He looks like he's from like another game. And I feel like the Minecraft stuff is going to be the same way. It's going to be so groundbreaking.
Well, they're definitely like out to break the mold with a lot of these characters to try to also make a splash. And I mean, part of it might also just be like trying to keep the dev team interested.
That's true.
Like, it's been so many years they've been making this stuff.
Sakurai interested. How many times has he said he doesn't want to do this anymore? and he's not going to do it anymore. And then they just float a big check in front of him, and they're like, bro, 10 mil for 3 years. You cool with that? Oh, yeah, okay. I love Smash.
Fine.
And I don't blame him. Like, if Nintendo dangled 10 million in front of me, I would go back and work on something I was sick of working on like that. So I get it.
Yeah, that's about what it would take to make me work on, like, Splatoon or...
I love Splatoon, actually. Someone was asking me on Ask Shane Anything last week, like, what was the game that I play that, like, when I have downtime or whatever. It used to be Call of Duty. and then it was Tetris 99. It's actually turned into Splatoon 2 over the last couple weeks. It's become the game that I've just kind of picked up to play while I wait for dinner to get finished or whatever.
Mine has definitely become No Man's Sky again after the recent Origins update.
Understandable.
That game just keeps getting better.
It's pretty crazy what they've done.
Pretty unrecognizable, and I've just found some new things. I got to upgrade my ship that I've had since like way in the early launch days. Because my ship was a little hampered because it's a full 48 slot inventory, but like it's before they started adding tech slots and letter grades to the ship, so it was sort of like a C grade with no tech. But now I found there was like new ways to get like upgrade modules, so now it's got everything. It's an S class. It's as good as a ship can be, and I'm like that felt really good to do that after all this time, and like now it's kind of outfitted to do some of the new stuff. Like those guys at Hello Games. They're nuts. I can't believe they're still putting this stuff out.
They totally stuck with it. We're going to be doing our end of generation awards here in the next couple weeks. We'll probably dedicate almost a whole episode of GameFace to Matt and I handing out awards for the last 7 years is what it's been now. And I hope
there's only one thing left that I want them to add to that game.
What?
And that is the ability to paint the goddamn ship.
You brought that up so many times. They still don't have it?
No, you can paint the freighters, but I'm still stuck with this ugly mint green fighter.
I even know the color of your ship because you mentioned it before. Yeah. Maybe that'll be their last capper to finish it off. They'll be like, look,
they haven't touched the actual actual starships in a while, so I think the next like mini update might be some new starship stuff.
What was the name of the dinosaur you discovered again?
Swagosaurus
Rex. For the guy who discovered Swagosaurus Rex, we're going to add that last fix onto the game before we move on.
I don't know if they consider that a good thing or not. But,
it didn't make the game look good, that's for sure.
No, I mean, I put it up just because I'm like, this is hilarious. And then like the haters grabbed it and ran with it.
Yeah. But anyway, what I was getting at with the end of generation awards is we're probably going to have like some kind of like endurance award or something. And that will certainly be one of the games that would be up as a nominee for that.
Although there is definite competition for that. Like there's a lot of stick-to-itiveness in this generation.
Yeah, and a lot of it is paid off in the end too. Rainbow Six Siege would be another one that
Destiny.
Yeah, Destiny. Absolutely. There's a bunch. That'll be a fun category. It's time to move on, though. We're going to talk for the last time about Watch Dogs Legion before the game comes out. It is the biggest release of the month. If you watched Dossier this month, you know it was the thumbnail. And undoubtedly the most hyped game that is coming out here before October is all said and done. And this week, Ubisoft did its final big blowout of the game. It released a bunch of media officially. It gave the press a 3-hour time limit to play the game, and all kinds of information has been coming out. Although I think what I would say mostly about this round of preview coverage is that not a lot of new stuff was coming out, and that's a little worrisome, I think. Most of the previews that were published over the last few days have been, it's more like Watch Dogs than I thought it was going to be. A lot of the journalists in their reports said that they were very nervous about going to play this demo because they were told that they were going to be put into the middle of the game instead of starting from the beginning of the game, so they wouldn't have tutorials. And so a lot of them were nervous that they would get in there and they would just waste their 3 hours trying to relearn the game again. But no, pretty much to a man or woman, they all said that I jumped in, I was immediately able to just take off and play it because I had already played Watch Dogs before. So the game does not appear to be as gigantic a departure as maybe Ubisoft's marketing has suggested, but hey, what else is new? That's video game marketing for you.
Well, I also think the departures are more in the details of what the characters can do.
Yeah.
And like the specializations more than anything else.
Yep.
The one thing I am concerned about, and some of the previews touched on this and sort of made me feel a little better about it. The one thing I'm concerned about is you might run into a Banjo-Tooie situation where you feel like, okay, so basically if you combine all these different character types, they can do everything that like Marcus could do in Watch Dogs 2.
Right.
And instead of being able to do everything with one character, now I have to swap between characters to do basic stuff because this guy can't run a drone and this guy can't shoot a gun properly and this guy can't throw a punch. Like, so that could be annoying.
There was some of that, though, in the Let's Plays.
There is some of that, yeah.
I watched it, and they would get frustrated. Like, some people would want to use, like, a spider bot, and they're good at it, and that's, like, one of their favorite gadgets. But they would have a recruit that didn't have that, and they would be forced to use some other gadget or strategy that they're not comfortable with. And maybe that's good in some ways, but I think
some ways you want to force that, but also, I mean, some of it might just be that they were thrown in the middle of the game. And if you were in that part of the game in a naturally evolving save, you would have built your team into something you prefer.
That's true. Well, they were able to build their team because that's kind of really all they did in that 3-hour demo was go out.
That's what I think the meat of that will be. But I think that's sort of, I don't know. I'm interested to see how that all plays out. The one thing, what I will say is like watching a lot of the video clips people put up, the sort of emergent stuff that happened was extremely entertaining to me. Yeah. I don't know if you saw the clip that M.H. Williams put up on Twitter, where he found this cop or like a whatever what's the
called like
guys?
Antioch or what's
Albion.
Albion.
But what's the the name of the OS that is the bad guy in all the games? C something, C Tech, C. You know what I mean.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But he's basically beating up this woman, trying to arrest her or whatever, and he walks up and uses his phone to tag his implant and electrocute him briefly to distract him. And as the Albion troop guy like twitches, the woman he was beating up like recovers and gets up, and then she pulls a stone cold stunner on him and just walks away. And I'm just like, if I wasn't already going to play this game, now I am going to play this game. And it's amazing. Like you can hear the glass break stone cold sound as it's amazing. And someone put that on there.
That's great. I like discovering stuff like that.
Yeah, and like he had another video where like another arrest was happening, and like without any prompting from him, all the citizens on the street where it was happening just decided to beat the shit out of the Albion guy and let the person get away. And I'm just like, this is the stuff that I'm here for in this game. Like, that's what I want to see. That's what
I'm here for in open world games in general.
Yeah,
like, that's the type of stuff that I play these games for. Now, Ubisoft, for its part, finally divulged the plot of this game. We knew it was taking place in London just from all the trailers and some of the stuff that it had said previously, but now it has finally revealed the plot. It is set in London. London gets bombed by a rival hacker group, and basically DedSec, which is the hacker group that you've been a part of in prior games in the series, is framed for it. Is this starting to sound familiar to anyone? And then DedSec has to reform and rebuild by recruiting people. This sounded familiar to anybody? Matt? What is that plot?
I don't know. What are you getting at?
Avengers! It's the same exact plot as Avengers. The good guys get framed by the bad guys. They're disbanded. They get back together, and you have to start recruiting all the people back to your organization so you can clear your name and end the threat. Same. It's the same as and obviously they aren't cheating off of each other. They were developed separately at the same time. But yeah, it's basically the same exact plot as Marvel's Avengers, which is a little weird, but more than a worthy setup. I mean,
I also think it's a pretty natural plot for DedSec. Like DedSec is sort of a shady organization being framed for something. Kind of happens in 2 as well. And in 1, they actually are a terrible organization. Oh, yeah. So like there's history there. I would be surprised if the DedSec parallel in this game isn't more Antifa.
I would,
because the director has said, he's like, yeah, it's a very political game. Like whatever Ubisoft management wants to say.
Finally honest about it.
There's no politics. It's just a totalitarian state taking over London. There's no politics to that. What?
There was some more stuff that came out though. For one, there are districts in the game, and you have to take them over. Again,
we knew this was not going to be that much of. We're going to reinvent the open world formula on this thing.
Yeah, it's a Ubisoft trope. It's in pretty much all its open world games, and it's in Watch Dogs Legion. At this point,
especially after the Breakpoint thing. Not that I was ever fooled by the Breakpoint thing, but like if you really look at some of their early like marketing stuff for anything and think they're really reinventing the wheel on these games, that's on you.
Yeah.
Like they are never going to do that. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is going to play like Assassin's Creed Odyssey with like 2 different control tweaks. Like that's all it is. If you're expecting anything else,
that's pretty much
it. Like I don't know what's wrong with you because like we know their MO.
We do. At this point, everyone knows their MMO. If you've been watching GameFace, you have no excuse for not expecting something exactly like this.
And guess what? Beyond Good and Evil 2 is going to be the exact same fucking thing, except for people have a Z-axis. Like, that's it. Like, it's going to be Watch Dogs Legion in space.
Yeah, that's probably pretty accurate. Now, like I said, there are districts, and you are charged with taking them over. There is an uprise meter that is assigned. That is assigned to each district.
That's what it is. CTOS.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And once the uprise meter hits the hilt, then you are presented with like a big mission, like a multi-part like mission where you have to,
up she rises. Yes.
Yeah,
well
exactly. And then once you complete that mission, then you've basically synchronized that area, and it even has like a cinematic where the fireworks go off, showing the area. It's a very Assassin's Creed. You're basically going in and taking over territory. And taking
Although,
it
to be
back.
fair, my favorite Assassin's Creeds have been the ones that really emphasize working as a group.
I agree.
In terms of
where you recruit
the territory
assassins
thing.
And all that. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, like Syndicate and Brotherhood, I think did that the best, and I'm kind of like I'm on board for that.
Yep, I'm totally cool with
if it's fun to play, if it's like fun to play moment to moment.
Cover mechanics are like insane. There's like 3 different states when you're behind walls, which is important because whether you like it or not, you're going to have to use stealth in this game. Sometimes you're going to have recruits that don't have any other abilities, but they're really good at stealth, and you're going to have to use their stealth abilities. So the cover system is important, and it looks really good, although I will say this, the run animation looks really bad. I was watching it, and it's like shades of Grand Theft Auto. It's like you have this amazing game with all this amazing stuff happening, and then the lead character is running like he's got a corn cob jabbed up his ass. Like
I think that's variable.
I'm sure the old people run differently. Yeah,
a lot of different characters have different run cycles, but like whoever that is, I don't know who that is you're talking about, but like
well, it was like an adult male, and I'm guessing that run animation is going to be used for probably all the adult males.
I believe the animations are more related to class.
No. Okay.
Or more to like if you like a brawler runs a certain way and a tech guy runs a certain way.
Yep. But what really struck me the most, just by watching all the Let's Plays and the trailers that Ubisoft released and the B-roll cut into impressions, was the variety. We were talking earlier about Squadrons, how I felt the mission objectives started to wear on me after a little bit. Watching all the footage for this game, it's just one crazy thing after another. Like I saw on the Easy Allies preview that they did, that there was one section where Bloodworth was just controlling one of the spiders, and the whole level is a 3D platformer, and you're just controlling the spider in this elaborate 3D environment, and you're trying to get up to the top of it. There's obviously tons of vehicle stuff, there's the hacking stuff, there's tons of puzzle solving, there's shooting, there's more gadgets in this game than probably any game ever made. What is really striking me about this is it's not going to be one of those open world games that really grinds me down quickly to where I'm like, I can't save another person. I can't invade another building and kill everyone inside it. It looks like there's going to be a lot more variety in this game, which has me really excited.
Yeah, I mean, there's always been attempts at that kind of variety in the Watch Dogs games, especially the second one.
Yeah.
I just have felt that, like, I've always felt like the Watch Dogs games are a great idea that has never gelled.
I'd agree.
Yeah. And they, and I think they agree too, because like clearly they put a totally separate team with a totally separate tone and so totally separate approach on Watch Dogs 2 after the first one. And I don't hate the first one. Like I think Aiden Pierce is one of the worst protagonists ever put in a game. But like I think I played it a couple times on various platforms, and I think it's kind of fun. Like it's not like I've never finished it because, like you say, it wears me out after a while doing the same things over and over again. But I'm really hoping this one, that Legion, is where they finally get these concepts to all kind of come together and gel. And I think that one of the problems they've had is like they've had, like you say, they want to do those drone things. They want to do those shooting things. They want to do the racing thing. Yeah. And it's hard because that means you're basically designing 6 different video games inside one
really
video
good.
game.
Yeah,
and they all have to be
hard.
Good. Yeah.
It's
so
really
like.
Hard.
Hopefully they've taken their time on this one. They gave it to another team. I think they got it this time. Maybe they pieced it together and it's going to work this time. I hope so because I really like the concept.
I'll say this: I'm really excited for this game. I am legitimately jacked up to play Watch Dogs Legion. They've sold me at this point enough to want to really give it a try.
Yeah. And I'm happy about this. Like I would love to see games take place in London more. Like open world games in London. I've always been a thing.
Why are they always here?
I don't know.
Why are they always in America?
Because GTA.
Yeah, it is.
But some of my favorite like one-off open world games have been games that take place in cities outside of the United States.
Getaway was in London.
Getaway was in London. Sleeping Dogs is a great game. Hong Kong. Yep. That's a lot of fun. Like take it outside. Go somewhere else.
America every freaking time.
That's why I like Assassin's Creed too, is because they take you different places
every time.
So I think this is a cool thing.
Yep. And then Ubisoft just basically dropped all the rest of the final details that anyone needed to worry about before the game came out. I guess they're just going to spend the next couple weeks just plastering us with advertisements online and on TV. But the final details, a free online multiplayer update is coming. But here's the catch. It's not coming until December 3rd, so the game will have been out 5 or 6 weeks. Plenty of time to finish the campaign, obviously, before you jump into multiplayer. Free single-player content is coming in 2021. Free again. And then a season pass is also coming in 2021 with multiple crossover characters from other Ubisoft properties.
Yeah, they're going to be. I think they showed. I can't remember the name, but it's the guy with the mask and the hood from Watch Dogs 2 with the digital facial expressions. Yep. And there's an Assassin's Creed character coming as well.
So there's lots of post-launch content coming for it as well. And it looks like most of it is going to be free, which is always good. And of course, it's a Ubisoft single-player action RPG, so you know that campaign is going to be gigantic. So everything is shaping up pretty well for Watch Dogs Legion. I do know that it is a franchise I think a lot of people associate with getting burned. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, certainly the first game...
Misdirection.
The first game was because of it was the first next-gen thing we saw.
Right.
Even though Ubisoft didn't admit it at the time. And then when it came out, it totally didn't look like that. Yeah. I think Watch Dogs Legion is finally looking kind of like the original video for Watch Dogs 1 at this point. Like there's some lighting stuff in that.
True. Some of the stuff that was in that first trailer, I think, is finally starting to be implemented legitimately in the franchise.
Some of the fabric and collision physics on the fabric and some of the lighting tricks, like we're only just seeing now.
Yeah, real time.
And Watch Dogs 2, I think, Watch Dogs 2 is sort of a beautiful half miss, I think. And I'm biased towards that game a little bit because it takes place where I grew up. Yeah. And it's actually a really great depiction of where I grew up. It's the only game that I know of that has San Mateo in it, which is the city I was born in.
It's the best Bay Area in a video game ever.
Fantastic. Yeah. And it nailed I will always give Watch Dogs 2 credit for one of the greatest. Because I grew up in kind of down the peninsula for a lot, Palo Alto. The upcoming tech Silicon Valley world was sort of where I came from, as well as San Francisco itself, because we would go there all the time. But there was early on playing it, I went down to Palo Alto in the game to see how it was, and there was a moment where I was riding a motorcycle really fast down what was probably supposed to be University Avenue, and I made a mistake and I bounced off something and I hit a wall. I basically went off into the sidewalk and smashed into the wall of a building, and hit the ground. The bike blew up and I landed on my back. And this woman walking by goes, "Oh, I hate that crunch sound," and just walks away. And I'm like, that is absolutely Palo Alto. That is it. Yes, that whole thing. Oh,
not worried about you dying.
Your horrible near fatal injury has really ruined my day. I hope you're happy. That is absolutely what would happen there. Yep. It was perfect.
Yep. So Watch Dogs Legion coming soon. Just to hear in a couple weeks. You don't have to wait much longer, and I think it's shaping up to be really something good. But we'll find out soon enough. Next up, we're going to talk about something I teased a little earlier when I was talking about how we were already starting to see how Microsoft was going to deal with distribution of Bethesda's content now that it has purchased Bethesda. And part of that manifests this week. In fact, I think it was yesterday it was announced there are 2 Bethesda-driven collections that are coming, basically repackaging old games into new products.
They're out of nowhere.
Out of nowhere. Well, is it out of nowhere after Microsoft purchased Bethesda?
I guess, but it's just oh, wow, that was fast and kind of weird. Does it seem kind of weird to you?
It definitely seems weird. It seems like
especially
something...
for games that they have put these games on deep discount so many times in the last couple of years. I think I got Prey for $3 on Xbox One or something. And the idea that anyone who is interested doesn't already have these is sort of odd to me.
Okay, so so we're clear on what's in each of these collections. The Wolfenstein Old History Collection includes all 4 games from Wolfenstein. Also Youngblood. I was actually surprised that they rolled Youngblood in there because it's a relatively new game.
Yeah, it's like less than a year, right?
Now, it was a budget game. It didn't sell for full price, and it did not sell very well. So maybe they're just like, screw
it.
We'll just toss it in there. It is a Bethesda game.
Yeah, is there a price point on that?
Yes, that one is $80.
I mean, that's not bad for 4 games.
4 games, $80, not bad. Then the second one is called the Dishonored and Prey, the Arcane Collection, and that includes Prey from 2017, Dishonored, and Dishonored 2, and that sells for $60.
Does that also have the Dishonored 2 like expansion thing?
Yep, all DLC included and all this stuff. So those are pretty good deals, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, if you spend $80 for those 4 games, I think you're going to be pretty happy with your purchase. If you spend $60 for those 3, I think you're going to be pretty happy with your purchase. I think the bigger question here is,
look, I think I actually bought the Prey Dishonored bundle already on Xbox One for like $15 about 6 months ago. Like, that's what I don't get is like they have blown these games out. They've been bundling the Dishonored and Prey stuff together for a long time, at least on Xbox that I've seen. And now, are they doing anything to them to make them worth $60? Or is that just
not? They're just like, hey, we have these good games that nobody bought. Maybe if we put all of them on one disc, people will care. I don't know if they will, but really what the bigger question for me here and what struck me the most about this story is how quickly things are moving at Bethesda after the acquisition by Microsoft. Now, I'll just say this before we start talking about this. I've had a couple people come after me on YouTube, surprise, surprise, and say, or come after us really, and say, that deal's not done. They don't own Bethesda. Literally, I've had people come to me and be like, you shouldn't even be talking about this stuff yet because the ink has not been signed. And they're right. The deal technically has not been signed yet. That won't happen until next year. They're going through processes to make sure there's not antitrust violations and monopoly, all that kind of crap. That's just typical. That doesn't mean the deal hasn't happened. They've agreed. The deal is going to go through. This is proof that the deal is done.
When Comcast bought NBC, which I was there for, I was in the middle of all that. The year before that deal was finalized, all operations functioned as though it was already happened.
Yep.
Like nothing is going to stop this train. I promise you.
It's a done deal.
It's done.
It is over. There's
done.
no, and I'm guessing these people are probably.
And if it wasn't done, you wouldn't know about it.
Right. And I'm guessing these people are probably PlayStation fans who are very upset that these games are probably not coming to PS5 and they're just holding out for anything.
The only thing that could really stop it is the antitrust thing, and there's no reason to think there'd be any kind of antitrust issues with buying Bethesda.
They're not big enough.
Not at all.
Bethesda's not big enough. There's no way that anything like that's going to stop the deal. So the deal is happening, and they're already acting on it. Let's be honest. Bethesda's not going to do this. Unless it has the blessing of Microsoft, and it has. And the final twist of all this is that an Xbox Series X version is coming of both of these collections. However, an official PS5 version is not coming. But if you get it for PS4, the games will play on PS5 with its backwards compatibility stuff.
Yeah,
so,
that makes sense. I wouldn't expect a separate PS5 SKU for this.
Yeah, but they are creating a separate SKU for Series X, which is interesting.
Yeah. Oh, even though they're not enhanced, really.
Right.
But like that seems to be a pretty clear road sign of how they're addressing this going forward.
Yep. It looks like if there's a PS4 version of something from Bethesda, then you're good.
But there's not going to be any more extra work going forward.
Nope. And if there's not a PS4 version of something, you're never getting it on PlayStation 5.
That seems like a pretty reasonable assumption.
And I think it's reasonable from Microsoft and Bethesda's perspective as well. It's like Microsoft bought them for a purpose. It's to help them grow their business.
Well, also why bother? You know, like you've sort of sort of walked that path already on PS4, and there's a lot of those games didn't sell, so why throw more money after it? I mean, I kind of feel that way in general about these collections, but it obviously doesn't cost you anything to bundle them up and put them in a different configuration on the Xbox store.
Yeah.
And you can probably make a Xbox Series X version pretty simply, like once you got access to all the internal stuff for that. Like Microsoft probably has teams can do that on their own, judging by what they've done with backwards compatibility on the Xbox One with games that they didn't need to reprogram. They didn't even need Rockstar's help to make Red Dead Redemption 1 look like that on the Xbox One. So it sounds like Microsoft sort of has that in hand. Whereas with that for a PS5 version, you might have to even work with Sony, and clearly those days are over. So in the case of a PS4 collection, it sounds like that's probably just like, okay, just bundle these together on the store and call it a day. Like that's nothing.
To me, this was kind of a subtle way that Microsoft and Bethesda are kind of signaling this is kind of how it's going to happen, without overtly angering PlayStation fans who are ultimately going to be left out in the cold with some of Bethesda's biggest games. But that's
certainly
the way
seems
it is.
like it.
That's just the way the industry works.
Unless like 6 to 8 months from now they put a PS5 version of the collections out.
Yeah, you think they might do that?
No,
because they're already PS4 games.
Yeah, I mean they probably could, but I don't think they will.
Yeah, I don't see any new
PS4
code
games
being created to run on PS5. I guess.
Also, the other angle on this that I think has not been talked about too much, to qualify as a PS5 SKU, you might need to take advantage of the PS5 hardware in a way that these just simply won't.
That's a good point. Yeah, you're right, as a SKU. Not something that you're just like downloading and it just works.
If you're just it's a PS4 game that's running on a PS5, that is one thing. But to make it a PS5 version, like it sounds like you probably would have to like optimize it at least to take advantage of the pipelines that Cerny talked about.
There's no way they're going to do that.
You're not doing that. Even if they hadn't been bought by Microsoft, I don't think they're going to do that.
They would have.
I don't know.
They had to.
I don't think they would have. I think you're just throwing good money after bad at that point.
They'd still sell 8 million copies on PlayStation, even if it was busted. I mean, it happened with Skyrim.
Yeah, but I mean, you just bundle the PS4 one, and that's still going to show up in the PS5 store, and you're still going to sell what you sell.
I don't think Bethesda will be writing to PlayStation 5 ever. I don't think they'll ever write new code for PlayStation 5. I think if any of their old games will get up and work on PlayStation 5, cool. Anything where they have to do work, not going to happen. That's my take.
Why would it? At most, it would be like the game's been on Xbox and PC for a year, and they hand it to a port studio, sort of like what Sony's doing with the PC versions of their games.
Yeah.
At most, that would be what would happen.
I would be surprised if even that happened, to be honest with you.
I mean, again, I think it depends on sort of whether Microsoft feels that Bethesda's titles are driving consumer interest to their hardware and to their ecosystem.
Do you think they might be more open to releasing it on PS5 if they have an exclusive that releases for Xbox platforms and doesn't do very well? Now, I know the chances of that happening are pretty slim, but...
I mean, not necessarily, but I wouldn't be super shocked if things like, say, not that they're necessarily going to make another one of these, but like say Dishonored 3, if that eventually got like got a PlayStation version, like a PS5 version, but you would never see like a PS5 version of Starfield, or Fallout 5, or Elder Scrolls 6. Like the big ones, the big internal Bethesda games stuff.
The ones that really drive their revenue. In all honesty, the other stuff is just like things they do in between.
Yeah, like if you're gonna put out like, I don't know, Wet 2, like I could see that going multi-platform eventually, but you want to hang on to the things that are the draws, whereas like maybe it would make more financial sense to put out the B-listers. Not that I mean that as an insult, because I really like stuff like Prey and all the stuff that they put out that doesn't sell for whatever fucking reason.
Hey, Minecraft is on everything.
Yeah. Tons of stuff Bethesda puts out that doesn't sell well deserves to sell way better than it does.
Oh, almost every game it makes. I would argue, other than like Elder Scrolls, deserves to sell better than it does almost every time. But I feel like games like the internal stuff, like the stuff that Todd Howard makes, will stay on the Xbox ecosystem. Doom I would probably keep for myself if I were Microsoft. Yeah. Maybe Fallout.
Fallout's another internal one. I would describe that as an internal. God knows when we'll see Fallout 5.
I don't think that's going to be on PlayStation. I don't think the next Fallout will be on PlayStation.
I don't think Fallout 5 is going to be on Xbox Series X.
Probably not. Well, definitely not.
I think Fallout 5 is going to be on next
They'll
gen.
still be owned by Microsoft whenever it happens.
Yeah.
But you're right. It is a long ways away. All right, so that's the latest on Bethesda and Microsoft. I know it's probably not what a lot of you guys want to hear, but we're here to tell you the truth. That's what we do on GameFace. Whether you want to hear it or not, we're going to give you the straight dope on every topic we cover.
And couple of Walter Concretes over here. That's the way it is.
Well, exactly. Well, I'll dispel that myth with our next topic, where we're going to talk about a cartoon marsupial. We're going to talk about Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. And I'm sure you guys are like, wait a minute.
Walter Concrete was a big Tasmanian Devil fan.
Cronkite
was a big Tasmanian Devil fan.
Yeah, so was my grandpa Satterfield. My grandfather Satterfield fought in World War II. He told me, the only story I remember him ever telling me, because he died when I was still pretty young, was his World War II story where he told me he had to lay underneath mud for like 4 days. And he never said anything. If you went to his house, he just sat there in his chair and just stared at the TV. He never laughed, except when Looney Tunes came on, and he would sit there and laugh like a loon, and it would blow my mind. I'm like, oh my God, Grandpa's laughing. He hardly talked. I hardly even remember what his voice was like. He talked so little.
Yeah.
But those cartoons, man, for whatever reason,
those things are. I grew up watching a lot of those because my dad loved them, and like. I put a bunch. So I don't. If anyone who has HBO Max, I don't know if you know this, but there's pretty much a complete collection of Looney Tunes from the beginning in chronological order, like arrayed across like 30 season groups. But everything you could possibly think of that isn't like the super racist ones are on there. And
I hate to laugh
when I was doing some baking last week, I put them on. I put on like a golden age. I started kind of in like the mid 40s and just sort of like went from there. And it played one of the ones that I remember. I hadn't thought of it in for forever, but it was the one where Yosemite Sam builds a cabin on top of Bugs' hole, and they fight over who gets to live in the cabin.
That's a classic, man.
And early at the very beginning, like Sam's playing like a banjo or something and singing a song, and Bugs is banging his way up through the boards because they built over his rabbit hole. Yeah. And Sam hears it and looks at the audio, looks at the camera, and goes, "Mice," and like I fucking fell over because like my dad loved that line for whatever reason, and anytime there was a noise in the house, he'd just look over and go, "Mice." And I was like, I hadn't thought of that in years.
That's a great episode.
All of a sudden, that thing just like brought me back.
Yeah, I remember.
Really good stuff.
I'll say this. That's also a great segue into the next topic because that's exactly what they're trying to do with Crash Bandicoot 4. It's About Time. They're trying to bring you back to like 1997. And I don't think it was the right move. Now, you guys are probably wondering, why the hell did Shane go back and play Crash 4 after he played that demo and talked about it on GameFace?
Certainly what I'm asking.
Well, first of all, we have a show to do every week. And sometimes beggars can't be choosers. Sometimes I have to play games that I don't necessarily want to play. And it can be hard.
I am reminded of Dustin. Who is it? Damn! Now I forgot his name. I'm getting old. Who's the guy?
Yes,
the guy who played King Koopa in Super Mario Brothers. He was in Dennis Hopper. Hopper. So Dennis Hopper tells a story about his son, where his son saw the Super Mario Brothers movie and asked him, "Dad, why were you in that terrible movie?" and Hopper, who did that movie for the money, basically said, "Well, son, I guess I did that money so you could have new shoes." and his kid says, "I don't need new shoes that bad, Dad." And your return to the Crash Bandicoot 4 reminded me of that story.
Sometimes you got to do what you got to do, and we needed an episode of GameFace this week, and so I sought out, and Activision sent me review code for Crash 4. And
because you only played the demo before, right?
Yeah, it was 3 levels that were in the demo, and I'll say this: it was like rock hard difficulty in the demo. Those levels were from like far into the game. I have no idea why they would do that. I mean, I kind of understand it because they wanted to show off a wide swath of everything that's in the game. So in the demo, you got to play as like Cortex, and then you got to play another level where you had a power up. And so
also, arguably, like people who are downloading that demo are probably like the more hardcore gamers who are also the ones who played Crash back in the day. So maybe you're trying to appeal to people who want like the challenge and want they don't want like to think it's like a baby game version. They want to know that they're going to get, because those old Crash games were hard.
They were hard.
They want to know the pedigrees there. So that kind of makes sense to me. But like, yeah, what a first impression.
I mean, it turned me off to the game.
Yeah, I mean, it would have turned me off
to
too,
the point where. I had this and Super Mario 35, and obviously the game that we talked about earlier to play, Squadrons, and I put this off to the end. Like, I just didn't want to play it, so I didn't start playing it until, like, the weekend. And then I started playing it, and I liked it! At least at first. So the game starts out very, very mildly. It's still like you get hit once you die. But the other thing about Crash is, sure, if you get hit once you die, but so do the enemies. All you have to do is hit the enemy once. And even if you just barely catch the enemy with just a pixel of your spin, it still kills the enemy. So intrinsically, there's a little bit of balance built into it. And the other thing I would say, too, is that when you start the game, you can choose to play it in retro mode or modern mode. Retro mode, there's no checkpoints. Modern mode, there's checkpoints. Play modern mode. I'll tell you that right now. But the game does start out very gentle. Like, it's basically the first level is just platforming, learning how to judge the jumping. I will say this, I still have not really settled in on a control scheme that feels intuitive and comfortable. I still cannot judge jumping distance very well in this game. I've tried using the D-pad. I've tried using the analog stick. I just cannot do it. And the double jump is so weird and awkward because he jumps once, and then his second jump, like, his legs flatten out, and the jump isn't the same distance as the first jump. It's like a little extra kind of mini boost. I've still, after playing this game for hours and hours, do not feel comfortable knowing when I jump, I'm going to land on a platform. Every time I jump, I feel like I'm right on the edge of dying. And another part of that is because there's no ledge mechanics in this game. So there's no grabbing onto a ledge and pulling yourself up. You either make the jump and you land on the platform, or you barely make it and don't and slide off and fall to your death. Because if you fall off platforms in this game, you die because it's one-hit death. But the first couple levels of this, I really liked it. Like, I was just storming through the levels, just having fun. And then they give you your first power-up, basically. And your first power-up is this thing that can turn stuff on and off. So there are objects in the world that are kind of an outline. And if you hit the button, they become solid, and then other objects become invisible. And so they start working the platforming around this. You have to jump. And so say there's like a wall, you jump, you hit the button once so the wall disappears, then you have to hit the button again before you land on the platform so the platform becomes solid. And so then, like right there, the game just starts becoming this trial and error exercise. This game could be really good. Like, if they had taken 3 or 4 hours for the game to get to that point, that's a good difficulty curve. I'm cool with that. If in the middle of the game it becomes that difficult, fine. We're literally talking about like the first 45 minutes here. The first 2 levels, great. Tons of fun. You're like, okay, I died maybe once or twice. I'm cool with that. That's kind of how games work. And then you get to like, once you connect with Coco and you can start playing as either one of them, and you get your first power up, that's when it starts to become a pain in the ass. And another problem with the game is I thought before it might be more free roaming. And I said after the demo, I didn't really see that. I'm not seeing it in the final game either. And the more I play the game, the more annoying that becomes because you cannot move the camera at all. At all. I have found myself constantly hitting the right analog stick, trying to see something that I need to see, and you can't touch it. If you go past a certain area, say you're jumping through a gauntlet of platforms that's challenging, and there's times where there's like stuff going all over and the platforms are disintegrating underneath you, and maybe there's like this little offshoot to the left that you just kind of catch with your peripheral vision, and you're like, oh my gosh, there's something secret there, I want to go you can't go get it. Once you pass it, there's no way to flip the camera around to go back to see where you're jumping. Maybe if you looked at it and just subconsciously memorize where the platform was you could jump back there. I don't know. But this is one of those games where once you go past something, there's no going back to get it. And the collectibles are a huge part of this game. When you finish every level, it's like, how did you do? And it shows like all these diamonds pop up and it gives you a score. And if you don't do great, it will actually recommend that you go and replay the level again. Yet, if you pass something, you can't go back and get it. It's just an archaic function of the way the games were originally made. Not being able to control the camera. There's all this like hidden stuff in the levels, and like you may see like this thing that goes off. You're like, well, I see the checkpoint up here, and I see this offshoot here that's probably going to give me something good. Should I go down that alternate path and take the chance of dying, or should I just go straight and get that checkpoint? But then I can't come back because in the camera, it's these weird contrivances that you have to make for this game over and over again, because again, it's tied to this design from 1997 to like 2000 or whatever. And it's a shame because I was enjoying it, Matt, like really enjoying it for the first like hour of play. And then once it got to this point where you have to try stuff and die. Now the checkpoints are pretty generous, but I guarantee you there are going to be parts in this game where they're not generous enough, because a lot of the checkpoints, after you hit the checkpoint, there's like a really easy stretch where it's just like a formality. You're just jumping over a bunch of platforms. It's not very hard. Then you get to the part where you die. Well, if you get to a really hard part and you have to keep doing that really easy section of the level over and over, it really starts to grate on the nerves. Another caveat for me, having played a lot of 3D platformers, is there's just not that much breadth to this game. There's a double jump. There's its take on the butt slam, which is kind of just like a body slam where he slams down on stuff. And that's pretty much it. There's not a lot of control nuance to the game, and obviously his spin. And so most of the game is just jumping and spinning. There's not much more that gets involved, although Cortex eventually, you play as him, and he has like a ray gun that like transforms stuff. But that I think I played 2 levels of him so far. Like, he's not a big part of the game. For the most part, you're just playing as Crash and Coco, who, by the way, you can switch between anytime you want, and their abilities are the same, so there's no trade-off on switching from one or the other. There are cosmetics that you unlock, and like already I have like all these crazy outfits for Crash, and they are crazy. They're not just like, hey, now he has a hat on. Like, they totally transform kind of how he and Coco looks. But I will just say this, Matt. There is still something here in Crash Bandicoot. There is an ability to make a good game from this IP. Now, I wouldn't say this game isn't good. If what you're looking for is the same game you played back in 1998, but in 1080p, this is it. And there are people out there who want that. Obviously, Insane Trilogy sold insanely well. So there's an audience out there for that. I just don't think that this game is going to reach beyond that audience, and I would not recommend this game to people who are not in that audience. It just becomes annoying after a while. It's like, I want to rely on skill, not some cheap trap that's in a game that you discover also because you can't move the camera. So sometimes you get caught by these traps that the only way to know that they're there is to get caught by them and then go back to the checkpoint and start over and do it all over again. And there's just a lot of that in the game. Just like even points where you'll jump over a platform, but there's an enemy there who's like dropping bombs on the platform. Well, the first time you do it, you don't realize he's not dropping the bomb on the first platform you land on, but the second one. So the first time you do it, you land, you take a few steps forward, you die. Second time you realize, okay, they're actually bombing the second one. So when you jump and land, you stop and you wait. You wait for the bomb to hit that next tile, then you move forward. That's what this game is like. You're constantly doing the same things over and over, trying to figure out what you can change from the last time you tried it to get through it. And it does feel rewarding when you complete levels in this, I'm not going to lie, because they are challenging. When you get to the end, you're like, whew! And then they tell you were really bad, you want to try this again? And you're like, hell no, I got through it and I'm not doing it again. That's what this game is like. It's not one of those games that you can't wait to go back and play it again. The level design isn't like that. It's all very linear, and there's a very sort of predisposed way to get through each level in a way that they want you to get through the level. It's not like Mario where they give you these mechanics and tools and just send you into the world, and you can find 6 different ways to get from this point on the ground to this point up here. In this game, there's one way. There's one way that they want you to do it, and either you do it that way and you learn the way and you make it through the level, or you fight against it and you get frustrated and you stop playing it. And that is Crash 4 in a nutshell. So I do not think it transcends for people who were maybe old fans, but then played Insane Trilogy and were like, oh, this isn't for me anymore. Maybe the new one will be. No. This game is made like Insane Trilogy. And it's a well-made game, and it's pretty, and the story's not terrible. Basically, you're trying to collect all these masks to stop this rift that Cortex and this other bad guy has opened in space-time continuum or whatever. You're collecting masks to close that up. It's the writing and the voice acting and the animation are good enough to sell it. The game itself doesn't, like, the worlds don't look that good. The characters look amazing. Like, the facial animation and just the animation in general throughout the whole game is awesome. I'll say this, like, the spinning feels really good. The sense of momentum that you feel from just sort of running or jogging and then going into the spin, I was able to learn how to be good with the spin very quickly. It's very intuitive, and it works the way that you feel like it should. And it's important because you have to be really pinpoint precision with the spin in this game because you got to take out enemies without hitting the TNT box. And again, like, you know, the TNT boxes and the nitro boxes in this game, if you just touch them, you die. And the camera in this game, it'll be like at an offset angle, and you'll see the little TNT box down in the corner of the screen, but there's like this other box next to it that you need to get the stuff out of, and you spin, and you can't move the camera, and you blow up the nitro box, and you die, and you go back to the... That's how this game works. That's pretty much what it is. So if you're an old fan of Crash, you're going to love it. In fact, it's probably the best Crash Bandicoot game ever made in that vein. If you have not enjoyed the Crash games in the past, so far I've not completely finished it. I feel like I'm pretty close to the end. So far what I've played in this game is not going to change your mind at all. But again, probably the best Crash Bandicoot game ever made. Do you have any questions, Matt? I know we just talked about this a couple episodes ago.
I mean, it sounds like what you describe is definitely sounds like you're describing a PlayStation 1 game in terms of the mechanics. So I guess that's good because the trilogy collection sold so well that I mean, like you say, it's not going to break out of that audience, but that audience seems to be pretty big. So I guess that's fine. But like that, what you describe of how the gameplay and how the level design works is like something I do not miss about that era.
I don't either. They're archaic. It's like this game turned out this way because technically they could not figure out another way to do it. And then it became like this endearing thing that kind of separated it from Mario. And, you know, because PlayStation fans were going to hate Mario and Nintendo no matter what, like they kind of rallied behind Crash. And the truth of it is that Crash's games are a joke compared to Mario's games. That's just the truth. I don't care what side you're a fan of. That's just the truth. And again,
even just playing Super Mario 64 again on that collection, even with the poor presentation, like there's no
I'd rather
contest.
play Super Mario 64 for like the 10th time than play this game. I'll just be honest.
And it's just like I don't know, like I get that there's people that have nostalgia for the Crash stuff in that regard and say so maybe it'd be like, you know, being glad that Sonic Mania came out similarly, like you know, it's like, oh, just this big throwback to this thing. But again, when Crash came out, I was 21. Like, I don't have any warm, fuzzy feelings for that era, really. That was just, at the time I said, like, this is all going to age terribly because it's the first 3D generation, and they're just kind of trying to figure out how cameras work, and none of this is going to age well. And I was completely right, even though people yelled at me about it at the time.
That is the biggest mistake of Crash 4, is not giving the player control of the camera.
That is really weird. Like, of all the things that I think would be something you could tweak, even staying true to that old style and philosophy of design, you would think being able to give the player the ability to look ahead or something would be...
Turn it. That's really the thing. Just being able to rotate it is a huge deal because it helps you see around corners and see stuff that's like really small because of the perspective, because the camera's locked. So stuff that, and if you keep running, the camera stays there, and Crash becomes tiny, and he's standing next to this little to a box that's like a pixel, and you're like, when is the camera gonna switch? Like, it's just trash. It's a trash way to make a game in 2020.
Like, I've always been of the opinion that like a well-designed game, you can get through without dying the first time if you happen to be good and lucky enough.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely not the case here.
Yeah, you need to give the player enough time to react to what's about to happen. And obviously that's not true of a whole lot of NES games, and like games around that, the era that even predate Crash. But I would argue that the games that have aged well and the games that people still play for fun now from that era don't do that.
Yeah, they definitely don't.
Mario 3 is one of the most fair playing games of its generation.
Agreed. Yep.
And like you don't get cheap shots in that game.
Yep.
And like most of the games that people continually go back to just don't have that. Granted, a lot of them are RPGs, which not a lot of cheap shots in Chrono Trigger, so you can't really do that.
Yep.
But it's just like I didn't have a lot of patience for that stuff then. I had no patience for it in the Crash games at the time, and I sure as hell don't want to pay full price to do it again. So yeah, not for me. I'll probably never play this game.
Yeah, it's also not an especially gigantic game. Now, they try to encourage you to go back and replay levels to get like all the diamonds and all the collectibles, and there's a lot of stuff to uncover in the levels. But again, just traversing through the levels is such a pain in the ass because there's no camera, and again, because there's no camera control, and again, because you can't go back. I don't know. I don't know why they built it that way. I don't know if that was demanded of them by Activision, but for the next game, they need to bring Crash into this millennia. Just be honest. It still is living in the last one. So,
although they tried a couple times and that didn't work out too well for them. So I don't know. Maybe this is his niche. Maybe this is where Crash belongs. This weird, frustrating throwback sort of thing that just appeals to these people that played I feel like a lot of the Crash nostalgia comes from like some of the games that I like from when I was a kid, where like I had that game and like maybe two others, and I couldn't afford to get another one, so I just played this one over and over and over and over again, and that's just what I got used to.
And it didn't even seem hard.
Eventually, yeah.
You got so good at them that like it didn't even seem hard. Now you go back and play them, and you're like, "How the hell did I finish this game?"
I don't know.
Crazy.
I mean, the one like that for me was Shinobi on the Game Gear, which is like the only game I had on that for a long time, and I just played it over and over and over again to the point that I could beat it without being hit.
And then someone else would come over and be able to make it past the first screen.
Yeah, and like now I put it on, and the funny thing is like I put it on an emulator now, and like, or like it was also on 3DS as a virtual console as well, and like there's moments where it comes back, like when I'm playing it, I'm like, oh right, and my thumbs just know what to do.
Muscle memory.
And then I'll get to
Tony Hawk.
And then I'll get to a point where I'm like, oh, I don't know what to do now anymore. But it's amazing that at some point I could do that to the point that if I got touched by an enemy, I would turn it off and start over. Like, I guess I do kind of have a speedrunner something in the way back of my mind, but I'm too old for that now.
Now, one thing I will say before we move on to our next topic is that I did say that, it was all about them keeping it old school. And they do. They hold onto that aesthetic 100%. One thing that's cool that's in the game is it has a pass and play. I hate that. Pass and play option where you all sit together on a couch and you take turns playing, and you're like, well, wait, why would they have to create something for like that? I just used to do that. Well, because they've built like a structure around it where if you keep passing the controller the way you're supposed to, it will keep track of all four people, how they've performed and what they've done. When you get to the end of the level, then you get like a report for each one of those players. It works for up to 2 to 4, and you just play it with one controller, which is pretty cool. But I think really it's just another example of when keeping it real goes wrong. It's like, I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to keep old fans happy. They're trying to keep it true to what makes Crash what it is. But unfortunately, that does not result in a great video game for 2020. But
it might result in great sales for a video game in 2020, judging by the Trilogy Collection. I'm interested to see what this thing sells like.
Enough because
that might be true as well. Also, like I don't know how well this holds up if you don't have pleasant 20-year-old memories of being 12 playing this thing. Like it might just be annoying now.
When we talked about it last time, I can't remember if the comments were actually on Sifted or if they were on the YouTube version of the show. But somebody piped in and said, oh, I made it like halfway through one Crash game in the Insane Trilogy and never touched it again. So I think a lot of people were unpleasantly reminded of what Crash Bandicoot really is when they got Insane Trilogy. So it will be interesting to see how Crash 4 sells. I hope it does well, but not so well that they won't change it. So I hope it does well enough that they're like, yeah, we're making another one, but it only sells well enough that they're like, well, we can do better than this, and so we need to work on this game more, because it does need work. And if they ever want to sell more than a few million of them, it's going to need a lot of work. So there you go. That's Crash 4. Available for PC, PS4, and Xbox One. No Switch version yet, although I would not be shocked if it eventually is coming. I also wouldn't be shocked because if you look at the game, I think it could absolutely run on Switch. The environments, no problem. They may have to cut down the character models a little bit to get it to run smoothly on Switch, but I think they can do it. So I wouldn't be surprised if it shows up there eventually.
And put him in a Mario outfit. At long last, he has become the plumber rather than yelling at the plumber.
Assimilated, yep. I do not see that happening. Next, we are going to talk about a Nintendo platformer, though, and a platformer that came out for free to celebrate the 35th anniversary of the original Super Mario Brothers, and that is Super Mario Brothers 35. It is built structurally a whole lot like Tetris 99. So essentially what it is, and if you don't know what Tetris 99 is, you're playing Tetris with 99 other people. And their screens are, your screen's in the middle, and then their screens are almost like little thumbnails on the side. And as you play, you're supposed to monitor what people are doing in the other screens. And then in Mario 35's case, as you defeat enemies, those enemies get sent to other people's worlds. So if you defeat a Goomba, that Goomba is going to appear in someone else's game, and then they have to defeat it, and then that goes to somebody else's game. It's this like daisy chain of enemies that are getting sent to different people's games. And you can control kind of where you send that stuff, although I would say this game is way less clear who you should be sending stuff to than in Tetris. So in Tetris 99, you can quickly scan everybody else's game boards, and you can see how high they're tiled up. So if you see someone who's about to go out, you send your blocks to them. Well, the idea is the same in Super Mario Bros. 35, except you can't quickly look at someone else's screen in this and really get a good idea of what's going on. You can tell where they are in the level, but you really don't have any idea if they're like completely overwhelmed with enemies on that stage or if they're running out of time, because the objective in this, like any Battle Royale game, is to be the last person standing. But you're playing...
I imagine it's even harder if you're playing handheld.
I haven't even tried handheld, Matt. I don't even know how you would see anything in handheld mode. It's hard enough on my 65-inch TV to see everyone else's screen and be like, oh, that's the person I should send like the enemies to. It's very hard. So I just kind of have mine typically set up on automatic. Now, when you first start playing this, at least in the first week, and this game is free, by the way. If you are a member of Nintendo Online, free. It is going away in March, much like Super Mario 3D All-Stars. After March, you won't be able to get it. So if you have a Switch, even Nintendo Switch Online, even if you don't think you want to play it right now, I highly recommend going and downloading it, because there's promise here. What's here isn't great, but there's promise. So as you're playing the game, and again, there's 34 other Super Mario Brothers screens going on. It's very hard to tell. I just set it up for automatic, and I'm hoping the algorithm is just smart, and it's like, hey, this guy's about ready to be eliminated. Let's send the Goombas to him. So when you first start playing, everyone sucks. And how it works is the only levels that are open are the levels that you yourself have completed. So this whole week, I've just played 1-1, 1-2, 1-1 to 1-5 over and over and over and over again, because people start playing it. It doesn't appear that a lot of people like it, and they stop playing it. So they never unlock more than those first, 5 boards. So when you first start, you get to choose any of the boards that you want to put in, and then they shuffle it into the pile of boards that will ultimately be played. And since everybody has only made it through the first few stages, everyone just throws in 1-1 to 1-3, and the whole game is just those levels over and over. So you have either the people who completely suck, who literally go out on the first gap. I'm not even kidding. Because the other part of this, Matt, is lag. Lag is involved in this. It's online. So if you have any lag, just think about it. Super Mario Brothers, Mario's jump, if you're running, is so long. If you have just one little skip of lag in the middle of that jump, it just ruins everything. It's not like a first-person shooter where you can kind of okay, dude's teleporting. I'll just aim ahead of him and I'll probably hit. It doesn't work in this. Like, you'll fall through the gap and die, and that's it. You're done. You die once, it's over. And then you go back to reloading. And I will say this, games turn over pretty quickly. I don't think I ever waited more than like 60 seconds after I left one game before another one started. But anyway, going back to what I was saying, is you have these two groups. You have these group of people that suck. They're never going to unlock any more levels to contribute to the game. They're always going to have 1-1 and 1-2 probably to contribute. And they're going to lose so badly, they're probably going to quit anyway. And they're the people who fall in the first couple gaps and they're gone. Then there are the other people who have actually played Super Mario Brothers once in their life before. And it just turns into this never-ending battle of attrition. Because as the players dwindle, less people are sending stuff into your world. So it's almost like this law of diminishing returns. Now, they ramp stuff up eventually to where you are. Like, you'll get a fire flower, and you may kill, like, 10 or 12 Goombas in a row, and then suddenly they're dumped on somebody. That can have an impact, but for the most part, man, it's very easy to stay alive. And once you realize that the game is more of a survival of the fittest instead of trying to make it as far as you can into the game, that's when it just becomes a wash. And everyone, it's like the games just go on forever. If you have like 4 or 5 people who are actually kind of good at it, I had one match I think lasted over 30 minutes, and that was it. I was like, that's it, I'm done. This is not pick up and play anymore. And look, there are very simple things that you can do to fix this game. In fact, we published an episode of Game Flip this week where Vincent actually points out some stuff that he thinks would improve the game. There are a lot of things that you could do to this game to improve it drastically. Just kind of, there's no circle that gets smaller in this game. That equivalent in this game is the timer. And as time goes on, the timer does get more aggro and it gets quicker, but they need to increase that. They need to increase the urgency through the game much quicker than it does. And I understand it. They don't want to scare casual people off, but trying to make it palatable to casual people has made it not fun for anyone. So you need to choose. You need to figure out, okay, who's going to play this, and then make the game for those people and make it as good for those people as you can. Because right now you have one foot on one side, one foot on the other, and it's not good for anyone. So again, this game is free. You can download it for free. It's supposed to go away in March. So go download it, because I do think that there's a lot of promise here. I love Tetris 99, but Tetris just organically is a better fit for this game design. And the same developer, Eureka, that did Tetris 99, made this game. So it's the same studio that made it. It's just that the game itself just does not work as well within this framework. So it's fun for a while, but the better you get at it, the worse it is, because you start to find other people who are as good as you, and it just becomes this, like, basically the first person who gives up ends up losing. You just get, after a while, you're like, I don't even want to do this anymore. This isn't fun. So you can win, buddy. Like, I don't care. There's 3 people left. One of you guys can win. It doesn't matter to me that much. So I like that they tried to apply an idea that I like a lot to a game that I like a lot. But it also shows you that doing that is not a surefire recipe for success. But I do hope they improve it. The fact that they're taking the game away in March makes me nervous. It makes me think that it may be one of those games that they just are like, this is it, and we'll take it away in March, and then we won't care anymore because no one else will be able to play it. I hope that they re-examine that and take some time to make the game better, because this is a game that, one, if it's improved, people should be able to play forever. So I don't know what's up with Nintendo lately, Matt, with this whole, like, hey, here's this thing for a few months, and now we're going to take it away. I don't know why Nintendo is suddenly on this weird kick with this stuff, but it needs to stop, particularly with games like this that have a lot of promise and could be something that you actually enjoyed over the long haul. Matt, have you played this at all?
No, I keep forgetting.
Does it sound interesting to you at all?
No, that's part of the, I mean, I kind of like the idea of applying that formula to other games is interesting to me, but not Mario, really. Also, like, people kept talking about it on Twitter, and all the impressions were so lukewarm that it just wasn't a priority with a busy week for me to, like,
that's a good way to put it. It's like
turn the switch on.
Yeah, it's not like crazy fun, but it's not so boring or aggravating that you hate it. It's just this thing.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea to try to apply the Battle Royale Tetris model to, like, other stuff. Like, and it might just be my preferences showing, but I would like to see them do that with Star Fox. like as you shoot, if you like kind of make it more like a standard shooter, where like if you hit like all four ships in a formation that come at you, that formation pops up in another game at people, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you're right. Like you mean like how you hold in the shot and it powers up, and then it can actually like, target
you
multiple.
And if you blow out everybody out in like the squadron that comes at you, that squadron pops up in the person you've targeted's game. So like instead of so you got the default like enemies that are coming at you, but now that default squadron has a second one with them.
Yeah, there's another tier. I like that. That actually would probably work better than Mario, Matt. When is Star Fox's anniversary?
I don't know.
I mean, look, this was a quick and dirty
First,
game.
we have to get the Zelda's anniversary, which is also the anniversary we use to ignore Metroid's anniversary. Right. So there's a whole lot to do there. Or not do, as the case may be when it comes to Metroid.
Yeah. But anyway, it is free. I don't think you can pay for it even if you want to.
No.
You have to.
I mean, you might as well download it just to have it. If they're going to do this artificial scarcity thing.
$25. It's like you'll get your online play for the whole year, and you'll get.
I mean, there was a point at which I would have said it'd be worth it just to have the NES and Super NES game
Not
libraries.
Anymore.
Holy crap! They've been dropping the ball.
So
even
bad.
like every once in a while, like I'll load that up and it's like there's something new to play, and I'm like, oh cool, what? I've never even fucking heard of that game.
Gygars from.
Yeah, like really? Like
that game came out in the US? I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, and some of it didn't. Like, here's the other thing that annoys me on that is sometimes they do put like Super Famicom games on it, and the box is not translated. Like I'm like, I don't know what that is.
I don't even know what the game is.
And it doesn't have there's no like title that pops up when you highlight. I guess I have to play it to find out what the fuck I'm looking at. And it's so weird.
Yep. Agreed.
And I mean, part of it is that any Super Nintendo collection is going to suffer from not having Square Enix on board, who clearly is not on board because they'd rather sell horrible upgrades of their iOS ports as some sort of nostalgia bomb for $30 for a fucking 25-year-old Super Nintendo game. But like, what a woeful disappointment that has all been.
Nintendo needs to do more of this for Nintendo Online, and more of also Overwatch. It was announced yesterday that Overwatch, a trial of Overwatch, is going to launch on Switch for free. They didn't say how long the trial was going to last, but they did say that when the trial was over, you're going to have to pay for the full game. And to get the trial, you have to be a Nintendo Online subscriber. To me, that game should be free. If you're a Nintendo Online subscriber, there's no value left in that game. It's like 5 years old. The sequel's on the verge of like being released. Like it should be just like Rocket League. The league is about to collapse
in on itself. Yeah. Like there's no.
It should just be like Rocket League at this point, bro. You've made your money off the game. Give it away and make your extra cash off the cosmetics and be happy about it. Like, and if Nintendo has to augment that and say, okay, well, we'll give you $100 million to offset the loss in sales, then do it. You're making that in like a month on Nintendo Online. There's a lot of ways Nintendo could provide a lot more value for Nintendo Online, and I hope that it looks at things like this, like Super Mario Brothers 35, and starts doing things that way. More stuff like that. More free games. We don't need 2 a month like we get with PlayStation. We're paying less than half of what we do for PlayStation Plus or Xbox
Just
Live.
Things that make
Just
it
throw
feel
us a bone. Like we feel like we're getting some value from it.
Just things that make it feel like make you feel good that you subscribe to it.
Yeah, like I don't. It's like I go in there and I'm like, oh, there's Punch Out again. Should I play that again? And I will. I'm like, okay, I'll play it until I die, and then I leave. And 5 months later, I go back. Oh, I'll play Punch Out until I die again. Like,
I really think it should just be. Yeah, I mean, at least the last update they did, one of the games was Donkey Kong Country 2, which I've heard of.
Right.
You know, like at least, I don't like the Donkey Kong Country games, but at least I'm like, okay, that's an ad. I'm sure the third one's coming later, and that's another thing that I won't care about, but they're going to expect me to be excited about. It's just everything on that everything on that platform that just continually reminds me of that year the Wii showed nothing but Wii Music and Animal Crossing.
Yep. And
Reggie acted like Jeff Keighley was like being ungrateful that he wanted more.
Animal Crossing.
Look, you got Animal Crossing. And Jeff's
bro. You got a whole year to fill out, bro.
Like, how disappointing do you have to be to make Jeff Keighley push you on something? Like the man is mostly there to enhance your marketing tactics.
I mean,
and he's still saying,
that is why he's there.
Games? Like
Yeah. So anyway, that's Super Mario Brothers 35, free to download on Switch if you're a Nintendo Online subscriber. All right, it's time to go to our last topic, episode 231. And this just fell right into our laps today. It actually kind of fell into our laps starting over the weekend, but then this morning was the capper. Over this weekend and today, PlayStation finally gave the PlayStation 5 to Japan, meaning it finally let the Japanese press play the PlayStation 5, go to a location, film it, record direct feed footage from it, etc. They had a big press event for the Japanese press. And so over the weekend, all this media was coming out, and if you weren't on Sifted over the weekend, you probably had no idea. But all this gameplay for PlayStation 5 was coming out for the first time, like Yuji Naka's platformer Balan Wonderland, or whatever the hell it's called. Like the first gameplay for that came out. They had a bunch of direct feed from Astro's Playroom, which is the packing game. And so anyway,
and apparently kind of robust, according to them.
It's like 5 hours long.
5 or so hours to do everything.
Yeah, which is way
bigger
good than the last Astro game was.
I'm glad they're I mean, I know there was mostly a VR thing originally, but I'm glad they're leaning into the Astrobot thing, because that's one of the most adorable things Sony's come up with in a very long time. It certainly beats Knack 3.
Yeah, absolutely. I like Astrobot as well. And obviously, he was a big part of PlayStation VR. And like the first time Astrobot is actually as cute as Sackboy thought he was. Yeah,
as my hot take.
Well, I'll say this: Astrobot was the first time my mind was blown in VR. When I had the little dude run between my legs, and I looked down between my legs and watched him run in between them. That was like my big VR epiphany moment that I had with that franchise. But anyway,
nothing sells Shane on VR like a dude between his legs.
Touche, Matt. So anyway, they finally let Japan have at the PlayStation 5 this weekend. All this cool stuff came out that was handled by the press, like Dengeki and Famitsu and stuff like that. And then this morning, PlayStation Japan official dropped a bomb, and it released a PlayStation 5 complete teardown video. This isn't Digital Foundry or some YouTuber with a bunch of screwdrivers taking it apart. This is actually the guy who designed the PlayStation 5, disassembling the entire thing live on camera. Every nut, everything. He takes a retail PS5 and just turns it into a table full of parts. And so we get to see the inside of the PlayStation 5 for the first time. It
looks like the PlayStation 5 was in a crash.
It does, yeah. And it's just scattered all over the table.
We have to figure out why this went wrong, kind of thing. It's those the plane crash investigation videos.
The crazy part, though, is that we learned a lot about the PlayStation 5 during this teardown. Now, if you go and watch it on Sifted, it's in Japanese, so you need to turn on the subtitles in YouTube's player if you want to understand what he's talking about. But there's also graphics that come up, and you're seeing those right now running in the B-roll that kind of explain some of the stuff. So it's pretty easy to consume. But there was a lot of little details that we didn't know about that we kind of got the first information on. First of all, obviously, the first thing he said was, it's larger than PlayStation 4. And if you're seeing the video now, it's literally the whole size of his torso, the PlayStation 5. It is gigantic.
It is the size of a full-size PC case.
It is.
Height-wise. It's gigantic.
It is huge. And seeing it next to that guy really, literally put it into perspective.
I want to know how big the box this thing comes in is.
It's going to be big. And remember how big the PS3 box was? It was big, too.
Yeah.
For some reason. But anyway, then he starts taking it apart. And before he takes it apart, he shows off all the ports. On the front, you have a USB Type-C, which is one of those ports that charges really fast, can send just megatons of information through it in a very short period of time. There's one of those on the front. Then there's also one Type-A USB port, but it is a high-speed port, which means you're getting 10 gigabits per second or whatever through that port, I believe. And then on the back, there are two of the Type A high-speed ports, then the LAN port and the HDMI port. Then on the front, there's two exhaust strips that will allow for some cooling on the front of the console. And then the entire back of the console is a grate for cooling. So the air can just flow freely outside the back of the PlayStation 5. What else? Let's see, the stand. Did you watch this by any chance, Matt?
Not all of it.
Okay.
The fact that it was in Japanese, I didn't see the stand. No.
Okay.
So I've seen illustrations of the horizontal stand that looks like a little podium sort of thing.
It's the same. The stand is the same, Matt. It's one stand. And so when you have it one way, there's like a plate inside the stand that you can rotate. And if you have it like horizontal, you have the plate spun one direction. If you have it vertical, you have it spun the other direction. And basically there's a little piece in there that lets it latch on to the particular part of the console that it needs to based on its orientation. And then once you so for one orientation, there's a screw that you need to install. For another orientation, you don't. But so you take that screw out and then you put it into the stand, but then that leaves a hole in the back of the PlayStation 5 where the stand was installed. Well, in the stand, there's a little rubber stopper that you pull out that you pop into that hole and you plug up the hole so the back of the PS5 looks all fresh and nice. Very clever. The design in that stand alone, I was pretty impressed with.
Especially useful for people who are storing their PlayStation 5s backwards.
Right. All of those people, Matt. So I was actually pretty impressed with some of the ingenuity in the stand. Both white panels can be removed, and very, very easily. There's like this one little thing that you turn, and then you lift up the corner and then slide it, and it just pops off, which means those plates...
Color customization.
Oh, yeah. So it made... I understood everything at that point. The console, always going to be black. They're only going to make one console that they have to keep manufacturing over and over. They're going to make plates, and you're going to make plates. You're going to get the CAD files, and you're going to have a 3D printer, and you're going to make your own plates for PlayStation 5. I can guarantee it. The CAD files, it may take a little while till they leak out, but they're going to leak out. And you're going to be able to make your own plates for PlayStation 5, but until then, they're going to sell them to you. So if you want that all black PS5, they're just going to sell you black plates. If you want
I can see like collector's editions of their first party games coming with plates.
Now, one thing I will say, those plates are big.
They are.
So as far as like collector's editions, just shelf space wise, I don't know. It makes a lot of sense that they would, but you start thinking if you're a GameStop or whatever, and you've got this product that's like these two huge plates and then this little game in the middle of it, it's kind of hard to figure out how that would work.
I mean, those boxes are already gigantic because of the statues and stuff.
That's true. Yeah, I guess that's true. They're used to making room for that. So regardless, like if you're looking at the PlayStation 5 and you're like, I hate that it's like white and it's got this black band on, don't sweat it. You're not going to have to worry about that at all. And the crazy part was how easily they popped off. Like literally you turn like one nut and poop, they popped right off, slide them right back on, easy peasy. And again, people are going to be 3D printing them. There's going to be a whole cottage industry on Etsy for this, Matt, where people are 3D printing these plates for the PlayStation 5. And I think a lot of people will do a really good business because Etsy is like the Wild West and there's no copyright laws there at all. So you're probably going to be able to get plates for anything, your favorite band, your favorite sports team, whatever. And you may be able to make them yourself if you're into it. What else did they show off? Let's see. So it's really deep. It's the fan on it. There is just one fan inside it. So then they crack it open, and it's not even that hard to disassemble. I was really surprised how easily and quickly he took the thing apart. But he takes it apart, and the first thing that comes out is the fan. And the fan is and I'm probably not using the right term for this, it's like a dual direction fan. It can pull in air from like both sides. But the fan is like this thick. It's like this huge like thing. I've never seen it. I'm sure PC builders have seen these fans over and over. I've never seen one like this personally.
I have a fan on mine that's about
the same
similar.
Thing.
The fans for CPUs are huge.
Yep. Well, that's nothing. This fan is actually small. I was surprised that it was that small. I thought it would be much bigger to cool something like that.
And also look at modern video, like the new video cards that have come out. You know, that new NVIDIA is almost the size of the PS5.
Well, at first I was shocked by the size of the fan, and then I saw the heat sink. Holy crap. So I'm guessing about 50% of the space inside the PlayStation 5 is the heat sink. And it is insane. Like, I'll make sure we put it up on the screen so you guys can see it. But it's this gigantic, like, tubular thing that kind of wraps around all the rest of the it almost looks like they finished it and they're like, okay, now we need to build the heat sink to fit around all the other rest of the components. But you can see why, because the power supply is inside the console too. So you're trying to dissipate the heat for the GPU, the CPU, and the power supply. So you have this fan that pulls in air from both directions, and you have this heat sink that's taking the heat away from those components, and then the fan is exhausting it out, essentially. Now, another thing that was really cool that they have included in this is a dust catcher on the inside of the console. There are these sort of valleys built into the hardware that are designed to catch the dust. And then every few months, when it's starting to fill up with dust, there are holes in the hardware to vacuum the dust out of the dust traps. So you take your little nozzle attachment on your vacuum, you stick it right on the hole, and it sucks all the dust right up out of your PlayStation 5. Again, something I never would have thought of that is brilliant.
That sounds like a Cerny innovation to me.
I guess.
That's outside the box thinking that sounds like him to me.
Yep. And really cool. It's like, I don't know if you guys have had this problem. My PS4 sucks up so much dust. It is always covered in dust. The PS4 Pro, on the sides, there's just always a thick layer of dust along the side where it's sucking the air in to kick it out of the back. So first of all, designing the hardware to catch dust is a big deal. And secondly, creating a way where you can go and get all the dust out of it hassle-free, brilliant. Just, again, something you just don't expect to see on a console that Sony has added. And they call them actually dust catchers inside the console. And that was pretty much it as far as like all the big new information. Oh, I mean, they did give some more specs though. So the storage expansion, it's an M.2 interface and a PCIe 4.0. And you need to follow those if you're looking to get a replacement hard drive for PlayStation 5. It also came out this week that just 664 gigabytes of that hard drive are actually usable. Matt and I talked about this with Xbox Series X last week, how it's losing 200 gigs and only has 800 gigs available, and we were whining about that. Well, PlayStation 5, you only have 664 gigs available to use for game storage.
I mean, that's pretty much where I thought we'd be, because the hard drive on this thing is only 865 or something like that.
Yep. It doesn't use quite as much for OS as Series X, but almost. It's close.
No, you lose a fair amount. And like the other thing like now that we know what hard drive we would need to expand this thing, there's only, as far as I know, there's only one solid state drive that runs fast enough, and it costs more than the Xbox expansion.
Yep.
So if you want more SSD storage on your console, you're going to be paying for it.
Yep. In both cases, but PlayStation is even worse. And the hard drive's smaller, so you probably have more incentive to actually go get one for PlayStation.
Now hopefully, I mean, what I'm very curious about is the functionality, speed, and ease of use of both consoles being able to store stuff on a normal 7,200 RPM drive and transfer it to the SSD to play off of that. Which is obviously only a concern for actual Series X and PS5 made for games. The backwards compatible games will play off the normal hard drive just fine. But that is a thing I am definitely looking forward to seeing, like Digital Foundry or somebody test out.
Yep.
Because that's a tech that's going to be the difference between spending $70 for a new hard drive to expand your storage and $250, depending on how this performs.
Yep.
So we'll see.
Yep, and a lot of people have complained about PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 3 being really loud. Well, Sony didn't listen for PlayStation 4 after the PS3, but it's listened this time. It has completely encased the Blu-ray drive for the disc-based version in steel to cut down the noise. It sits inside this steel case inside the console to make sure that you cannot hear the drive running. And he actually talked several times about other things that they've done to baffle the console and make it more quiet. He says over and over, quiet. This is a big thing for them. Right from the beginning he mentions it, and he mentions it again at the end, that the thing running quietly was a big thing for them. And then here's two big things that a lot of people didn't know yet. Wi-Fi 6. It has a Wi-Fi 6 antenna. It also has a Bluetooth 5.1 antenna, and both of those are like bleeding edge, right at the breaking edge of tech. So they're future-proofing it a little bit. They've gone above and beyond with those antennas for this. But look, everything's going Wi-Fi, everything's going like 5G. You got to do it. That's all there is to it. Then 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 RAM at 448 gigabytes per second. That's a big pipeline. That's a huge advantage for PlayStation 5. And then a 350-watt internal power supply. Matt, why do I have a 550-watt power supply in this PC here at the studio that for this crappy like GTX, I think it's like a 970 or whatever I have in this PC here just to render video? Why do I need a power supply like that? But the PS5 that can render crap at 4K 120 frames per second, don't forget that, 8K. What the hell? What gives there?
Because wattage has nothing to do with power. Like, that's just not. I mean, also, like most PC power supplies you're going to get are vastly more than you'll ever need for that PC because you'd rather have more than too little.
Well, the graphics card will tell you when you buy it. You need at least this power supply.
Right, but you
just
need
to run the GPU.
But that power supply runs the card and the hard drives and the CPU and the motherboard and everything. It runs everything. So you need some extra.
Same thing with
usually
PS5.
You want a little extra space. Yeah, but you know exactly what components are going into PS5, so you don't need to overestimate. You don't need to have that extra.
At. It's interesting
headroom.
how when you really, if you're someone like Cerny and you can fine-tune an architecture that you can create basically a PC that will run crap at like 8K and you only need 350 watts.
The resolution doesn't matter. Like you just, as long as you can, as long as you can power the graphics card.
Yeah, but the point is,
as a card.
Yeah, but the point is, the graphics card that could do that requires more power. It's
no, not really.
Yeah, it does.
Like they require they are more powerful chips, but they don't necessarily require more physical electricity to run. I mean, depending on how many fans you've got on that thing, like that's the thing is like one of the reasons it probably requires less, only 350. And also remember, it probably doesn't require all that 350 because some of that is there because one day it's going to have to run a VR headset. It needs to be able to output some power for that, for peripherals and the camera and all that other stuff. Same way with one of the reasons you have 550 on that PC is so like if one day you decide to put some more components in that thing, it'll have enough power to run it. Was one of the reasons I had to replace a power supply on an old PC because the new card I wanted to put in did require more power than it was able to put out. But I think if you're looking, like one of the reasons you need a lot of power on those new video cards is because the cooling systems are crazy.
That's true.
And in this cooling system on
this metal liquid cooling.
Yeah, but that's not going to take a lot of power.
He said that it took him 2 years just to develop.
I believe that,
cooling.
But like that's not the impressive part of that is not the power consumption. The impressive part is that's definitely part of the cooling, but it's also definitely part of their effort to make it quiet.
Yep.
Because I don't know the stuff about the Blu-ray drive is weird to me because like the people who didn't complain about the Blu-ray drive being loud, it's the fucking fans.
Yeah, it was the fan.
Like as soon as I go to the menu in Horizon Zero Dawn, it sounds like the PlayStation is about to fly away. Like
Prepare
so clearly
that was
that's a big priority for them.
And it's good. It should be. I mean, as loud as their last couple consoles have been, that's the right move.
And it doesn't bother me too much because mine's across the room and like there's a surround sound system. But also, especially I bet in Japan, you're probably playing these things in smaller rooms right up against them. The thing I'm interested in is how much heat this thing puts off.
Yeah. I'm guessing a lot.
Yeah. And same with the Xbox Series X. Like people who are still under NDA, but there are people playing that. They're saying it's overheating 2 hours. It shuts down to save itself because it's too hot. Like the fact that if you're in a small room, you can feel it heating the room up because it puts out so much heat.
My plasma TV does that.
Yeah,
my plasma
plasmas are
heats
really
up
bad
the room
about
when
that.
it's on. It's crazy.
When it gets cold here because I'm in this room I'm in. I have my 65-inch plasma, like my old plasma that I replaced the 4K. I have it in here because I didn't want to get rid of it because it's such a good TV. So that's what I used for my old systems. Is I hook it up there and that. If it's really cold because it's a small room, I'll just turn the TV on.
That's all you gotta do.
Heat it up.
I can put my hand above the vents on the back of my TV, and you feel the heat coming out of it, a heat vent. It's crazy. And then there was a couple other things that just were kind of mentioned this week that I wanted to catch you guys up on before we move on. And this relates to a topic we just discussed last week. Dirt 5, cross-save, Xbox Series X only. So if you play Dirt 5 on PlayStation 4, your save will not work on PlayStation 5. This goes back to what we were talking about last week with Yakuza, how it would work.
There has to be something about the architecture of that thing that you have to build it from the ground up to do it.
PlayStation right now seems like it's the only one that can do it. The Marvel Spider-Man, that save's going to work, but for everybody else, apparently it's not.
Well, Spider-Man's not. Miles Morales will.
Miles Morales will, that's right.
Marvel
Spider-Man won't.
Yeah, if you have an old PS4 save, it will not work on the remastered version.
Yep.
There has to be something. Yeah, that's not great. Like there has to be some. I mean, certainly for certain things, I would want to like what about Destiny?
I don't know.
Like, is that carried server side? Is that like I don't. So there's a lot of questions there.
There are, and that is maybe the last X factor with PlayStation 5 at this point. Is how that stuff really works. Because right now we're getting mixed messages from third parties and Sony.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you one thing. I'm getting Watch Dogs Legion and Assassin's Creed on Xbox.
Because
I know I won't have to start over when the new system shows up.
I understand it. It makes a difference. Absolutely. Then one final piece of information. For PlayStation 5, trophies are going to $999. You're still earning the same, but instead of $100... they're going to $9.99. Do you think that's a good idea?
So not of what?
Like how many you can get per game? I think is what I assumed.
I mean, good luck. Guess you give me a trophy per enemy.
I mean, seriously, like everything you kill, you get a trophy. I mean, I like it because it gives developers more options, and I do think that like with 100, they're kind of too stingy. Like I would prefer to get them a little more often than I do. I would
guess that no one's going to actually use 1,000 trophies, but like it's better to have that.
I'll be honest. I don't even know when I get trophies because I turn off all that stuff to capture footage. I don't want like a notification popping up like Matt wants me to play Squadrons or whatever. Like so all that stuff's turned off. I don't even know. But when I go back and I start looking like through like the screenshots that I have on my console, that's when I know how many I got. Because for whatever reason, the PS4 automatically takes a screenshot when you get a trophy.
Oh, I turned that off years ago.
Oh, I didn't know you could.
You can turn that off. I turned that off long ago because it was like
filling up your hard drive.
7 gigs of hard drive space devoted to screenshots of trophies that no one has ever looked at.
Now that I have a Pro, it's taking the screenshots in 4K too, so it's really
exactly. Yeah, that. I think I turned it off shortly after I got the Pro because of that specifically.
I have not done it yet. I will.
It was literally taking 4K screenshots for trophy thing. I mean, no.
Yeah. So anyway, they're boosting the trophies available for each game. I don't think any game's going to go to 999. But I think a lot of them may go to like 150 or 200, something like that.
I bet one will just to say they did. Like some weird
they'll
indie
name
game.
the game like 999 or something.
Yeah.
Although I think we had that already, didn't we?
I think there is a game called that, yeah. But I definitely could see someone doing that. Some weird little game doing that just to like get people to buy it.
Yeah.
You know, like, sort of like you remember when that stupid Avatar, the last Airbender game, sold like crazy because you could get 1,000 achievement points in the first 5 minutes. Like,
and King Kong at launch, like you get all this.
King Kong was a really easy one.
Hour.
Man, I saw we all played King Kong when that system came out, when 360 launched, right?
Yeah.
Like I saw some shit on Twitter like a month or so ago where people were trying to like say that King Kong game was actually one of the best games on 360 and is horribly underrated and actually a hidden gem. And I'm like, no. That game blew. Okay. That game was just a video, like a tech demo, basically. There's no.
People are crazy, Care.
I think you're just getting into like, again, were you 12 when the 360 launched? Because I think that's why you like that King Kong game so
Very
much.
possible. So anyway, that's the latest update on PS5 from Japan. My guess is that's it. That's the last update we probably get as far as like official updates from PlayStation.
Unless we get another round of pre-orders at some point, because that hasn't happened yet.
I think that's going to happen because the other thing that was announced this week, Jim Ryan said that that the PS5 is going to outsell the PS4 in its launch window by a significant margin. Meaning,
you're going to have to make a lot of
units. Meaning that there's no way that the pre-orders that happened already accounted for all those units.
There were some rumors what the Xbox Series X has been put out on pre-orders is it.
Oh, really?
Like that's what it's going to be. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just Reddit chatter, really.
Don't give up, though, guys. I think if you still are looking for these, I think if you do a lot of people are going to give up. That's the thing. And if you don't give up and you're one of the people who stick with it, I think you'll get one. So if you really want one.
I've still got Wario 64 on notifications popping up on Twitter, even though I'm reaching my breaking point, man, because a lot of what he tweets about is stuff I really don't care about. Like, I really don't care what the Mario pins look like, dude. I didn't need 3 tweets popping up on my phone about that one.
He's very granular. He's also a huge Nintendo fan.
Yeah, so. I know.
I mean, he's Mario 64, so.
Of course. But you see the tweets pop up on the phone specifically for a couple of weeks, and you're like,
I did not turn on notifications for him. I just follow him. And whenever I'm like, I have time now to try to look for this, I go to his feed.
Yeah, for this, I just wanted to keep advised because you never know. For a while there was you never know.
Makes sense.
Suddenly for a few days there was suddenly there's more.
It was touch and go. Yeah, absolutely. There was many times I didn't think I was going to get them, and I ended up getting them both. But
and I really do want another pre-order of a PS5 so I can cancel my bundle at GameStop and not have to get all that extra crap.
I didn't even think about that, man. You're still holding that right now, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I have another one too from Amazon, which is fine, but the other one is as a gift for somebody and who wasn't able to get one. But I'd really rather just get the system and not spend the extra $300 on the bundle. I mean, it's not like anything in the bundle would be useless to us, like either me or them, one way or the other, except that destruction game that no one gives a shit about. Yeah. I'd have to turn that around real fast and get rid of
you may want to play it. All the Xbox fans are pointing out it's the only true exclusive at the launch of PlayStation 5.
Demon Souls.
No, then they had the caveat that's not a remake or an old game.
It is a remake.
No, they said that it's not.
It is a remake.
The statement is Destruction All-Stars is the only true exclusive PlayStation 5 launch game that isn't available on another console eventually, or isn't an old game. That's the phrase that they're using to try to dance around.
Well, there might be a reason for that.
Yeah, seriously.
If that's the case, how come it's the game that looks the most like something I've already played 100 times?
Exactly. Yep, it's true. So anyway, there you go. That's GameFace 231. We're going to do a big Q&A, and for those of you who are like, man, I'd like to get on this Q&A, but the show isn't streaming live, every Wednesday, I go and I'll tweet. So follow us on Twitter at Sifted Games, or you can go to the website and we will ask for questions. There's an official GameFace thread in our forum, but if you go to sifted.net, usually up in the header it'll say GameFace questions. Just click on that and ask questions. Some people have already figured out, and we have tons of questions for the end of today's show, which is great. But before we get to those, here's a word from our sponsor. Do you live life outdoors? DeShazer Ryan Realty has a nice level lot just outside of Libby, Montana that's perfect for you. With access to Crystal Lake via shared dock and boat ramp, it's an ideal location to build the getaway home of your dreams or just park your RV. Enjoy fishing, paddleboarding, kayaking, boating, and more just a few steps away. It can be yours for just $72,500. No matter where you live, contact Doug DeShazer at 406-291-1643 or DeShazerMT@gmail.com. Even if you're not looking for property in Montana, he can connect you with local realtors in your area who can help you. If you want to see more, head over to DeShazerRyanRealty.com. That's DeShazerRyanRealty.com. Thanks once again to DeShazer Ryan Realty for sponsoring GameFace and Sifted. It makes a world of difference to us, so thank you very much. And now it's time for our Q&A. You guys sent us some great questions. As usual, we're going to kick things off with Zet Saber. He says, what do you want in a Need for Speed game? Something we actually did not answer when we talked about Need for Speed. I was happy with the 2010 Hot Pursuit, but people online still had many complaints about the game when it came out. What is your secret sauce for arcade driving games? Do you have any secret sauce, Matt, for arcade-style racing games?
I mean, I like them to commit one way or the other. So like you're going to have me pick a Need for Speed game to bring back to remaster, I would either say go full tilt into the customization tuning stuff, like with Underground, like picking up one of the Undergrounds and take that and do it up to the hilt with like all the customization, all the wraps, all the vinyls, all the, the world, everything like that. Or go back to Need for Speed 3 Hot Pursuit, the original one, which was a straight up arcade racer on designed tracks, no open world. Atlantica is one of my favorite tracks in the history of racing games, like full on arcade track based racer where you just pick different cars with slightly different stats, however you like to drive, and just drive it. Like those would be my two ways to go with Need for Speed. Either go point to point, not circuit.
Okay.
I always prefer that. So I would say like an old school PlayStation 1 era Need for Speed racer in the vein of 3 or Porsche Unleashed which are just like point-to-point racing through like weird, cool zones and environments with the cops chasing you, or go full tilt, like underground tuning car culture with it, like one or the other. But don't try to do both. Don't try to kind of split the difference, go down the middle. Pick a lane, no pun intended, and just go for broke with it. Like commit to the concept one way or the other.
Okay. I'm going to go a little more general and just kind of tackle arcade-style driving games in general. And for me, what separates an arcade-style racing game from a sim racing game more than anything is the ability to drift. And not just being able to drift, but the drifting has to have some level of competence needed. Not drifting where, hey, I'm turning and now I hit the drift button and suddenly smoke is coming off the back of my tires. I'm talking about like Mario Kart 64 type drifts where it's skill-based and there's a reward for being good at it. That, to me, is what separates the good arcade-style racers from the average ones. And obviously, you can do whatever you want in Mario Kart because it's a cartoon. So it doesn't always make as much sense in games like Need for Speed. But I don't see why there's any reason why a Need for Speed game can't have a boost system like the Mario Kart games do, where you have 3 levels of boost, and the better you are, the higher level you're going to reach on the shorter turns. So I would welcome that to other arcade-style racing games. And to me, that's what really separates playing arcade-style racing games from playing sim racers. Next up, from @MightyBromax on Twitter. What do you guys want the most from Horizon Forbidden West? Based on what weren't... Okay, I don't understand the rest of this question. What do you guys want the most from Horizon Forbidden West based on what wasn't done so well in Zero Dawn / Frozen Wilds? There's quite a lot I want to see improved, but probably the first 2 things that come to mind are way better melee combat and the ability to climb everything. Okay, I'm just going to stop you right there at the climb everything and just give you the big
No.
That is the last thing I want in Horizon.
Not turn Horizon into
Breath of the Wild. You keep your Breath of the Wild out of my Horizon, bro.
No thanks.
No thanks.
And I don't need better melee combat. The melee combat is a get out of jail, like get off me thing. It shouldn't be better melee combat. You should be using the bow. You should be using the traps. You should be
you're not
hunting
supposed
these things.
to use melee as a primary form of combat in the game.
Yeah, and that works the way it is. The improvement I want of something that wasn't done as well as it could have been in the first game, because I don't agree with those 2 things being not as good as they could have been because they were choices. The climbing and the melee in Horizon Zero Dawn work exactly as intended. The thing that I think they need to improve on, and I think they will with the help of what they've learned on the engine through Death Stranding, facial animation and lip sync.
Yeah.
I've been actually replaying it a little bit recently because one of my friends started playing it for the first time, so I went back and started playing a little bit to kind of refresh myself, because to sort of go along with it a little bit and give some advice on the way. And it is actually stunning to me how bad the facial animation and lip sync is.
The cinematics in general for the that all needs overhauled. The whole conversation system needs overhauled. The angles that they use for that stuff just look awful and awkward, and there's nothing cinematic about them. The voice acting is fine, but as Matt said, the facial animation is like a travesty. So I agree.
The faces don't match the voice acting at all. Like the quality of the presentation does not match the effort the voice actors are putting in.
Yep.
And it's really, really noticeable. It's 3 years on.
Agreed. Next up from Joaquim Dragoon, which route will you take in Cyberpunk 2077? Gangster? Nomad? Corporate? Why?
I have no idea. I'll decide that when I get it.
I'm going to be the street kid.
I would lean Nomad, but I don't know.
Nomad, I'm not a big Mad Max. I like Mad Max, but I'm not like a gigantic Mad Max fan. And I think most people who really like Mad Max and that kind of aesthetic are going to take that. Usually in games, I try to pick characters or classes that are most like me in real life. Why I consider myself a street kid, I'm not sure. I mean, I've lived in cities most of my life, so maybe that's part of it. But I think
the skater.
I guess I think I just relate to that class more as far as looking at myself and who I would.
I don't care about what I resemble the most. I'm just gonna have to look at what you can do coming out of the gate, because in the end it doesn't really matter.
No,
you're gonna be able to build a character however you want.
You can end up becoming whatever you want in this game. It's just kind of like your launch pad more than anything. Next, from @trick_question7 on Twitter. What are your favorite Halloween moments? Real life, event, movie, or game? A little early for this, but I wanted to include it anyway. It's fun.
I don't know. I got some stories, but nothing appropriate for this.
Yeah. I could go on and on. For me, up until the last few years of my life, Halloween has been a huge thing for me and my wife. We would go out, we get dressed up, we go out to like a club and hear a DJ or go to a concert. We have done something fun, crazy, exciting for Halloween like ever since we've been together pretty much. So I could go on and on. I went to some crazy raves on Halloween, like back in like the late 90s, early 2000s, where they just did it up right, where like literally it's like 10,000 people and you're like in a mausoleum and it's like convincing and stuff like that probably are the memories that have stuck with me the most for Halloween. But then I remember like when I was in like the 4th grade, me and my friends were out egging windows, like out egging and soaping windows. And one of my friends soaped the car window of the parent of some kid that we went to school with, and the kid came out and like yelled at us for it, and I just punched him in the face and knocked him out. Literally, just one punch. I punched him, and he went out cold, and we ran away. And so I'll never forget that, and I feel terrible about it, even though I was like in the 3rd grade or whatever. But that's another Halloween memory I'll probably have forever.
Yeah. I mean, I used to go to the Castro parties.
That's a good
back
time
in the
too,
90s.
man. That's insane.
They don't do it anymore, but like, they used to basically they opened basically an entire area of San Francisco into to be this one huge street party.
About that. It was great.
And it was amazing. You know, I was like, we went several years in college in the mid 90s, and it was just you'd never seen anything like it.
You can't put it into words.
Amazing.
The stuff that you'll see.
It was like
some of it you don't want to see.
Some of it, but like imagine like taking like the rave party you're describing, except it's like 7 city blocks.
Yeah, it's on
like,
the streets too.
It's just astounding.
Yeah, it was
incredible.
I went to it a couple times, and
it was like for late 90s. It started to get a little rougher. They started to add metal detectors, but in like 94, 95, I remember like nothing bad happened.
Because
like
it was San Francisco. That's the way the city used to be.
Used to be that way.
Yep, not anymore.
No.
Next up, from Raphael Michael. We've seen today that the PS5 plates can be easily removed, thus facilitating the potential for tons and tons of custom plates, just like the 3DS did. Shane and Matt, what would be your dream PS5 custom plate set?
I don't care. Like, I will never change that. I guarantee
I mean, I'd honestly just be cool with all black. Like,
all black would be nice. Like,
I'd
maybe
rather have an all-black console than a black and white one.
Maybe something Shadow of the Colossus related or something, but like, I'm never going to go out of my way to get a custom plate for that.
Like, if I ever get extra plates for it, they're not going to be for, like, the Steelers or the Penguins or, like, my favorite video game franchise. It's going to be something, like, artistic where, like, the plate is, like, shaded or it's, like, textured different, stuff like that. It's not going to be like, hey, now I have a Tales of Symphonia PlayStation 5. Like, I'm not going to do stuff like that. It'll be something that'll make sure that it still looks good after it's over. And I think these plates, like, I wouldn't even be surprised if within a couple months after the PS5 goes on sale, there might even be plates on day one. Who knows? We just maybe don't know about it yet. And then our last question.
It might end up being just nothing because, like, I mean, you remember when the big thing was like the custom faceplates for the 360? Yeah. When was the last time you thought about that?
Well, I just thought about them this last month because I've been doing like a big purge of all of my closets, and I found literally a stack of 360 faceplates this high, like 20 of them, where I had just been getting them and just stacking them on top of each other. And I did not throw them out, Matt. I don't know why. I don't know why I kept them. And
I don't have any. I did find when I was going through the garage a few weeks ago, and I did find that the E305 one.
Oh, dude, that was worth like tons of money. Still,
yeah, it's still in the styrofoam. I never opened it at all.
I still have it too. Yeah,
I don't think it's worth anything now.
They're all numbered. Those are worth a lot of money, dude. I went and looked on eBay like 4 years ago, and I was shocked at how much they were going for. I didn't sell it still, but I was like, dang, okay, I'll hold on to that one for retirement. But you're right. For the most part, faceplates, worthless.
Faceplate's worthless, and Velocity Girl never got to sell her Tony Hawk shirt.
That's true. Our final question for today's show comes from Commander Fett. What other mid-tier AAA games would you like to see after the success of Star Wars Squadrons. Okay, I don't know that we know that Squadrons is a financial success yet, but critically it's a success, so we'll take that. Can you think of any, Matt?
I mean, I'd like to see them make another Wing Commander, but that's also EA, so I don't want any multiplayer in it. So I don't know what I'd go with that.
I don't know if he's asking, like, is there an old mid-tier game that should have done better than it did, or is he asking us, like, what game in the future should come out?
I don't know.
I can't follow it. He says, what mid-tier AAA games would you like to see after the success of Star Wars Squadrons? So I think he is saying, okay, what IP would you like to see a budget game made for? And I would say that we're already seeing this. And this is actually kind of a recent development in the industry where publishers and IP holders are starting to become a lot more generous with letting other companies use the IP. And I think a good example of that is Super Mario Bros. 35. They gave Mario to this dinky little Japanese developer called Eureka. Even 5 years, no way that would have ever happened. And we're starting to see it in other parts of the industry too, where either companies like Sony are like, okay, we'll let these smaller studios remake our stuff or just remaster our stuff. You're starting to see a loosening of the hold that these IP rights holders have had on this stuff for a long time. They used to be very protective of it. They wouldn't let anyone work on it unless it was them. All that's changing now. It's pretty awesome to see. Like, it's good to see Nintendo let someone else make a Nintendo game so that we don't have to wait every time for Nintendo to make them. And look, how long will it be until a third party makes a mainline Mario game? Maybe never. At least probably 10 years. But the truth is, we're starting to see a loosening of this stuff. And so I guess to your point, we're going to see a lot more of this stuff going forward. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see like a budget Fallout in the future, or a budget Halo in the future, or another budget Mario, or a budget Zelda. And we probably should have got that already, actually, with some of the stuff that's been coming out on Switch, to be honest. Some of the games they've been selling for full price on Switch are a little bit of a reach, but
like that should have been Link's Adventure.
Right. That should have been like a $30, $40 game. Exactly. That's what I was getting at. So I think we're seeing it already, and I think you're going to start seeing it with bigger and bigger IP as time goes on. Any other thoughts on that, Matt?
Not really.
Okay. All right, that's it for GameFace episode 231. Follow us on social media. It's very important. I'm not that important, but if you want to know what's going on with Sifted, you should either follow me or follow Sifted. You can find me on Twitter at Dinfire. You can find Matt at MKyle. That's MKEIL. And you can find Sifted itself at Sifted Games. So if you're listening to GameFace on Spotify or iHeartRadio or Apple Podcasts or Google or anything, and you're like, who are these people? I just found this podcast and I keep listening to them every week. We're Sifted, bro. You can find us at sifted.net. That's SIFTD. As I said at the beginning of the show, we're not doing the show live right now. We're really hurting for Twitch Prime. So if you're watching this either on our Patreon or on Sifted, please go to twitch.tv/SiftedGames and pledge. It's going to be at least a week, maybe two, until we do another live episode. And by that time, the month may have rolled over, and we may not get paid for this month from you guys at all. So please, just take the second. Twitch.tv/SiftedGames to subscribe. If you want to support us with your money on a monthly basis, head to patreon.com/Sifted. Again, SIFTD. And you can pledge whatever you want. You can give us $1 a month, $200 if you want, whatever you want. But we appreciate the support from everybody from all corners of the internet. Our crew on YouTube have been amazing. Our YouTube memberships have been doing really well. I've been pleasantly surprised by that. You guys are subscribing on YouTube. We appreciate it. Whatever you can do to help us, we really, really appreciate it. So on behalf of Matt, I'm Shane Satterfield. We'll be back next week. GameFace is up and out.